a lot of basketball to get to today. Boy, I tell you, man, the cheaters in basketball. But we'll get into that coming up. And we got hockey tonight. So we got a ton to get to. But Mel Kiper Jr. has released his latest big board. And I say we start there because I have a couple of takeaways from Mel's big board. If you look at the top of his big board, he'll go Trevor Lawrence with the first overall pick, or I shouldn't say with the first overall pick because he's just ranking the players. But Trevor Lawrence is first. Kyle Pitts is second, the tight end out of Florida. Devontae Smith, wide receiver, Bama 3. Jamar Chase, wide receiver, LSU 4. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 5, Alabama. Justin Fields, the quarterback, Ohio State 6. Zach Wilson, quarterback, BYU 7. Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle, who originally Mel had up there towards the top with Trevor Lawrence. He's down to 8, the offensive tackle from Oregon. Rashawn Slater, a guard from Northwestern, is 9. I have not heard much talk about him. Then again, the Titans aren't in the market for a guard. And I don't know who would take a guard in the top 10, but that's okay. And then Elijah Vera Tucker, a tackle from USC, is 10th on Mel's big board. So if you look at the top 10, and I have a bunch of different takes from this because Mac Jones, for example, who I think right now the smoke screens are he's going 3rd overall to Alabama. Mac Jones is 12th on Mel's board. Trey Lance, who seems to be another top 10 quarterback candidate, he's 13th on Mel's board. But if you notice that on Mel Kiper's big board in this draft, no defensive players in the top 10. In fact, one defensive player, Micah Parsons, a linebacker at Penn State, is the only defensive player in the top 13. Then at 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, Mel Kiper Jr. has all defensive players. Well, that's good news, right? Because the Titans are picking 22nd. It means they're going to have options. My 2 takeaways from the top of Mel's board. 1, if you take Zach Wilson 2nd overall and you take Mac Jones 3rd overall, you're overdrafting. If Mac is the 12th best player in this draft and you take him with the 3rd overall pick, San Francisco, you're overdrafting. That means that somebody else gets a better player. Jamar Chase. Somebody else gets a better player. Penei Sewell. Which most people would say that those guys are better players. But as far as the Titans are concerned, this means that they will have options. The defensive players in the top 20 on Mel Kiper's board. Micah Parsons, a linebacker, Penn State. He's 11th. Titans aren't in the market for a linebacker. He probably wouldn't fall to them anyways. Jamin Davis, a linebacker out of Kentucky at 14. Again, Titans not in the market for a middle linebacker, which I think he is. It'll be funny. I've watched a lot of Kentucky football. I have no idea who this guy is, but he is 14th on the list. Now's where it gets interesting. 15, 17, 18, 21. 15, Caleb Farley, the corner out of Virginia Tech. 17, Patrick Surtain, the second corner out of Alabama. 18, J.C. Horn, the corner out of USC. 21, Greg Newsome, the corner out of Northwestern. Not one pass rusher that the Titans, that we have heard anybody connect the Titans to, is in Mel's top 20. So I put together Titans targets. I mean, if we were to legitimately sit there and say, okay, who do they need the most in this draft? There are 3 corners that are sitting in vicinity of where they're picking. The 4th is at 15, which might be a little too rich for the Titans, but we hear about red flags. Caleb Farley sat out last year. He opted out. There's questions about his injury history. There's questions about whether or not he can cover in the NFL. What's a year off going to do to somebody trying to run at that level? Patrick Surtain seems to be more of a sure thing out of Alabama. So I think my takeaway here is the defensive players, and we can all agree, yes, they have a hole at wide receiver probably in the slot, which this is a deep wide receiver draft. They should be able to fill it. They have a hole at starting tight end. Anthony Ferkser is going to make $3 million this year. That's not a starting tight end. But those can wait. We know they need defense. And I'm looking at Mel's board, and if I know anything, it will be that there will be defense that will be available with the 22nd overall pick. Again, some of these guys are going to get overdrafted. Mac Jones will get overdrafted. Trey Lance will get overdrafted. Zach Wilson will get overdrafted. That doesn't necessarily affect the Titans. Where it affects the Titans are the pass rushers get overdrafted. If Jalen Phillips, Gregory Rousseau, the two guys from Miami, Azeez Ojulari, if those guys start going and get overdrafted at 15 or 16 or something like that, it will push those corners down. The Titans will have their choice of pass rusher that we have heard them be connected to. They'll have their choice at pass rusher with the 22nd pick. Kwity Paye, Mel Kiper's got ranked 16th, but I've heard a lot of people that aren't so sold on Kwity Paye. He's probably off the board. If he's really the 16th best player in the draft, he's probably off the board. But everybody else is still sitting there. And the more I look at Mel's big board, the more I think this year the Titans are going to have options. I remember a couple of years ago when the Titans had the 5th overall pick. They needed a wide receiver and they needed a corner. And that was a weird draft because the high-end players of that draft. Now, later we found out that Patrick Mahomes was, in fact, a high-end player and clearly one of the best quarterbacks drafted in the last 25 years. But the high-end players in that draft were at positions the Titans absolutely had no need. Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey were running backs. Jamal Adams was a safety. They didn't need those kind of players. They need a wide receiver. They need a corner. Now, again, I think they overdrafted Corey Davis. I would love to see everybody in the league's board at where they had Corey Davis because he certainly was never as good as anybody he was drafted around. McCaffrey's an all-pro. Adams is an all-pro. Watson's a Pro Bowl quarterback. Mahomes is an MVP. So all the guys that were drafted in the same vicinity of Corey Davis are much better players. Even Fournette, I would argue Leonard Fournette has had a better career at the NFL than Corey Davis has. But where the Titans are sitting in this draft, they're going to have options. They're going to have the ability to trade out because one of these guys is going to slip to them. Whether it's Farley, Surtain, J.C. Horn, or Greg Newsome, one of those corners is going to slip to them so they could pick them at 22. Multiple of those pass rushers, Jalen Phillips, Gregory Rousseau, Azeez Ojulari, Zaven Collins out of Tulsa, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah of Notre Dame. One of those, multiple guys will fall to the Titans or will be available at 22. So they will have options in this draft. And then there's the option to trade down. The further you look at the board. Again, TD was on our show last week, and he was talking, just raving about Azeez Ojulari. I even wrote it in my notes, where he said Azeez Ojulari, the pass rusher out of Georgia, was made for the Tennessee Titans. Mel doesn't even have him ranked in the top 25. If you really love Azeez Ojulari that much, and I don't think there's anybody who knows the Titans and puts in the work watching the film more than TD does. But if you really love Azeez Ojulari that much, you can trade down in the first round, maybe add a 3rd or a 4th round pick like the Titans did when they traded with the Ravens and gave up a 4th round pick to go get Rashaan Evans a couple of years ago, and that is another player. There's your tight end. If you trade down in the first round, because all these defensive players are going to be there, and you add a 3rd round pick, there's your tight end. There's Brevin Jordan out of Miami. There's Trey McKitty out of Georgia. So the Titans will have options. And the tough part about it is I can't tell you what the option will be. My gut says at corner. And that's the position. If you were to say, okay, Titans in the first round, what position would you like? And you know I hate doing that. But I would say corner. My gut says one of Farley, Surtain, J.C. Horn, or Greg Newsome will be available with the 22nd pick. If they take a corner with that pick, I like it. Now, wide receiver, I don't think the guys that are really worth taking in the first round, Jamar Chase, Mel Kiper ranks him 4th. Jalen Waddle, Mel ranks him 5th. And Devontae Smith, Mel ranks him 3rd. Although, as much as I love Smith, I think I would go Chase over Smith personally. But I don't think any of those guys will be there. So now it's Kadarius Toney. Now it's the other, the second round-ish guys. You can trade down and get that guy. You can trade down and get your receiver. You add a third-round pick. That could be your receiver. They have options. So if one of those four corners aren't there, trade it down, get one of your pass rushers, and move on. There are other corners that are going to be available in this year's draft that are more second-round guys. So when you try to add up needs and you try to add up fit as to where these guys are going to fall in the draft, and then you add up what other teams are going to do. I think that Caleb Farley's off the board because he's the 15th best player as a corner. He'll get drafted right outside the top 10. Patrick Surtain's probably off the board. He'll be drafted anywhere from 10 to 15. J.C. Horn, probably off the board, but we've seen the 18th player fall to 22. Greg Newsome, 21. There's a chance he's off the board because maybe the corners get bumped up like quarterbacks. But I got a pretty good feeling one of those four guys is probably going to be there. And if not, perhaps the best pass rusher in the draft will be available at 22. So, again, Mel Kiper's latest his latest board, his big board is out. All offensive players in the top 10. Positions the Titans don't need. They need defense. And there's going to be defensive players and really a glut of them right around where the Titans are picking. So let's get excited about it. Trevor Maddich will join us later today. We'll get Trevor's thoughts on Mel's latest board. And again, defensive players. I brought this up to Ryan Tannehill. Hey, how would you feel if the team just went out and spent every pick on defense? I wonder, hey, you can really build the defense, especially with 22. 615-737-1025 is your phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, yesterday for the first time, we heard a new player linked to the Titans, somebody that and I'm sure many of you, had not heard linked to the Titans yet. Does it kind of give us an idea, give us a hint of where they may be going in the first round or what they may be thinking? We'll get to that coming up next. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Stillman & Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming on the Game Nashville app, streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, Twitter. Anything else? Nope, that's it. All right, streaming everywhere. So go ahead and tap that app or get on your smart TV, YouTube. Just put in 102.5 The Game, Stillman & Company, whatever. It'll say streaming live. Just click it, and you will see my very, very nice green shirt. 615-737-1025. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. How much do you think this team needs to add on defense in the offseason? And would you be upset at all if they spent all the free agency and all the draft capital trying to improve the defense after the year you guys had on offense?
Oh, yeah, that's a question for Braves and John. Those guys played great yesterday. So defense played good enough to win yesterday, and the offense, didn't come through. So, I'm not going to speculate on defense or what they need or should get. I'll let John and Coach Vrabel figure that out, and then whenever the time comes, we'll try to come together as a team next year, offense and defense, and be better than we were this year.
Ryan Tannehill pleading the fifth. Now, this again was at the end of the season, which is a little different. But, Ian, what's your gut say? Do you think Tannehill looks at the free agency money that's been spent on defense and the draft capital that I assume is going on defense? Do you think Tannehill looks at that and says to himself, good, go fix the defense, I'll take care of the offense? Or do you think Tannehill looks at it and says, what are we doing for offense here?
Well, I do think he's probably happy with Bud Dupree and D'Amico Autry and Janoris Jenkins, because it was obvious the defense needed a little bit of a spruce up. But I do wonder if he's thinking, hey, I lost Jonnu and Corey Davis here. A little bit of help wouldn't be bad.
A little bit of help would not be bad. Now, I do wonder also what he thinks of the Josh Reynolds acquisition, but who knows? But it's interesting because before Bud Dupree was signed by the Titans, we looked at this draft and said 22 has to be a pass rusher. Everybody who mocked the Titans, whether it was NFL Network with Bucky Brooks and his mock drafter, Charlie Casserly and his mock drafter, Mel Kiper at ESPN and Todd McShay, and Daniel Jeremiah and Dane Brugler at The Athletic, and you name it, they mocked the Titans a pass rusher at 22. Because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that the Titans had no pass rush. They've spent tons of money on it. They've gotten nobody in return. They've got to do something. Then they signed Bud Dupree, and all of a sudden it's, they could go pass rusher there, but they could go Mel Kiper Jr. last week, Kadarius Toney, the wide receiver out of Florida. And so yesterday we had Benjamin Albright on, who's an NFL insider, and he's based out of Denver. Now, unlike all of the other guys, he's not tied into a network. He's not beholden to, hey, make sure that we take care of this or we take care of that, or he just tells you what he hears. And he linked the Titans to a name that I had not heard much of. Take a listen to what he said.
Well, Rousseau's not going to get there, but he would be one that I would like. The other Miami edge rusher he's a great player, but he's got some other issues going on there, including medical stuff. So that's kind of the problem there. He's much more athletic. Like I said, Osai, I think Osai is a great fit there. I think the Titans are kind of in a luxury position though after getting Dupree, is that you can kind of let the board come to you. Let that draft play itself out, and one or the other, one edge rusher or one of those premier three corners, I think probably falls in their lap there, and then you just get to get a great pick because everybody was thirsty for quarterbacks early on in this draft.
Joseph Asai. He even mentioned yesterday on the show that the Titans have talked to Joseph Asai multiple times. Now, that is not always a tell that a team likes you or not. Chris Sanders has told the story that he thought he was going to Washington because Washington was always hitting him up around the draft, and they interviewed him, and they met with him, and then all of a sudden in the third round, the Houston Oilers drafted Chris Sanders, and Chris hadn't even talked to the Oilers. He was like, wait a minute, what? What are they doing talking to me? And then they drafted him. Didn't talk to him. So the Titans, he says, they're talking to Joseph Asai. And again, we've heard Gregory Rousseau. We've heard Jalen Phillips. We've heard Zaven Collins. We've heard Azeez Ojulari. We haven't heard Joseph Asai. Now, remember, the Titans are picking at 22. And John Robinson, while sometimes he drafts for need, and I don't like what he does, I don't think he would ever overdraft something ridiculous. Although Isaiah Wilson last year, a lot of people had, more as like the 40th best player in the draft. They took him at 28. But here's what Dane Brugler in The Athletic says about Joseph Asai, and he ranks him 46th in the draft. The 8th best edge rusher. Brugler writes, quote, Asai has some body stiffness that is most noticeable at the top of his rush, but he is consistently around the football due to his quickness and pursuit. His locked-in effort and physical presence help mask some of his issues. Now, we've heard Mike Vrabel after the season. When Mike Vrabel was asked about, hey, do you need that guy, that edge rushing guy? And Vrabel talked about, we need guys who love football. And when John Robinson was asked about building the team back in the window and defense, and we need guys who love football. That's what they did. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy, he's got an issue here, he's got an issue there, but he is locked in. His effort is 100%. And I'm thinking, maybe the Titans are valuing that a lot right now. After Wilson, after Beasley, after Clowney, maybe that is something they're looking at. They're saying, hey, we need guys that have high motors. And then they overrate that in their head because they didn't have that in the past guys. It's like a relationship, right? Say you and your girlfriend break up because you guys have nothing in common. Then wouldn't you go look for a girlfriend that you have a lot in common with? Even though you wouldn't just totally sell out everything else. But I'd rather have a girlfriend you have something in common with, because the last time it didn't work out with someone you didn't have anything in common with. But the reason that the Osai news, the thing that Benjamin Albright's saying, yeah, they're interested in Joseph Osai, or they've talked to Joseph Osai a lot, defensive end out of Texas, is nobody considers him to be a first-round pick, which tells me they're not looking at him with a first-round pick. Let's say Dane Brugler's board is right, and it's not, but let's just say it is. If Dane Brugler's board is right, the Titans are probably looking at him at 52 and not at 22. So if they're thinking pass rusher in the second round, draw your conclusion from there. Are they looking corner? Are they looking wide receiver? I mean, I would love for the Titans to go pass rusher in the first 2 rounds. I don't think it's feasible. But the news that they're talking to Joseph Osai, now they're probably talking to a bunch of guys. So it's nothing crazy here. It's nothing groundbreaking. But the news that they could be looking at him, that makes me think pass rusher may not be their position in the first round. I keep going back to the corners. Mel Kiper Jr., Caleb Farley, 14, Patrick Surtain II, 17th, J.C. Horn, 18th, Greg Newsome, 21st. If one of those guys falls there at 22, do the Titans jump on them? Are they all the same? Are they all man-to-man corners? I know right now Patrick Surtain II can go man-to-man in the AFC South against those wide receivers. I don't know about Greg Newsome at Northwestern. But this is getting the board is starting to reveal itself. Some of the movements the Titans are making, it's starting to reveal themselves. I just wonder if Bud Dupree has moved them off a pass rusher in the first round. Now they think pass rusher is a second round thing. Maybe now they think pass rusher is a third round thing. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Josh texts into the text line. From what I hear from this board, they can lead John Robinson to not drafting for need, which would be a strength of his. Although I do think the conundrum is the Titans are picking a first round pass rusher, a corner, or do you draft a wide receiver like Rashad Bateman? I think 22 is probably a little too rich for Rashad Bateman. But saying that, corner, pass rusher, receiver, that is drafting for need. Not drafting for need is if the Titans have the 22nd pick in the draft and they draft Mac Jones. That's not drafting for need. Drafting a left tackle, drafting a running back. That is the antithesis of drafting for need. But I will give you an example of why drafting for need is so bad and why sometimes you got to take the best player available. Jonathan Taylor was available with the 28th pick in last year's draft, running back. Derrick Henry was on the franchise tag. We didn't know the Titans were going to sign him to a multi-year deal. We also didn't know that once Henry got paid, after his big rushing season in 2019, we didn't know he'd have the season he had in 2020. But Jonathan Taylor was sitting there with the 28th pick. If the Titans had drafted Jonathan Taylor with that pick instead of Isaiah Wilson, which it's easy to say now, you would have taken anybody with that pick over Isaiah Wilson if you could do it over again. But if they draft Jonathan Taylor, they have the best backup running back in the NFL. And more importantly, Indianapolis doesn't have him. That's a conundrum the Colts find themselves in at 21, one spot ahead of the Titans. If Indianapolis is sitting there and they don't have a need, and maybe it's defensive line, or maybe it's wide receiver. Now, I think they've got a little bit of a need at wide receiver, but a position the Titans clearly have a need at. And the best player on their board is sitting there at 21. And they don't draft him because they don't have that need. They now know they're risking the Titans getting a better player who can help beat them. And if I was Chris Ballard, that would scare me to death. And it kind of scares me with the Titans because, to the texter's point, and a point I've made a lot, John Robinson, he's just not great when it comes to drafting for need. When he's sitting there and he can do whatever he wants, he gets A.J. Brown in the second round. He gets Derrick Henry with his third second-round pick. Kevin Byard didn't need a safety. Gets him in the third round, all pro. When he drafts for need, you get Rashaan Evans. Texter says, run us through who you would want with those 4 to 5 picks. I like J.C. Horn, Elijah Moore, I believe the wide receiver out of Ole Miss, Patrick Jones, I think a pass rusher out of Pittsburgh, with the first 3. I mean, I guess I, in theory, could go through somebody's board and say, I like that guy. But none of that stuff really, truly matters. To me, I think the Titans need to find a legitimate pass rusher. And you may be able to do it in the second round. You may be able to do it in the first round. You probably get your pick of pass rusher outside of Kwity Paye, and maybe even including Kwity Paye with the 22nd pick. If you get the best pass rusher in this draft, I feel pretty good about your chances. Maybe it's the best corner in the draft. But to me, I would have no problem. And I know they need a slot receiver, and I like Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss too. I like Elijah Moore. There's a lot of guys that are in this draft. I mean, the kid Rondale Moore out of Purdue, I absolutely love. I mean, I'm just looking at some of these boards, whether it's Rashad Bateman in the second round, Terrence Marshall out of LSU in the second round. I like all those guys. But if they went defense with the first 4 picks and then traded for a tight end, I'd be totally fine with that. Patch it up as you go, figure out wide receiver, but I'd rather have a good defensive player than a good wide receiver to be my third wide receiver on a team that has a 2,000-yard rusher and another 1,000-yard receiver. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Ian, would you say I'm a moralist?
Sure, I would say that.
Well, I guess I'm not saying that I'm not Mr. Morals, but I also am kind of a believer in what's right. And there's a lot of things that are not right about the NCAA basketball tournament. But now it's really starting to bother me, and it really manifested itself last night. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025, FanDuel Sportsbook. That's my official sportsbook app. There is always one team that ruins your bracket. Always. That's why this year you got to bet the tournament on the FanDuel Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook. Because on FanDuel, your first bet is risk-free. It doesn't matter if you're betting Gonzaga or if you're betting, well, I was going to say Oregon State, but obviously they're out. New users, UCLA. New users get up to $1,000 in site credit back if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel has all the action with great odds games day and night. And I guess now it's just night. But if that's not enough, FanDuel wants to make you a millionaire. Yes, you. They're giving away $1 million to one lucky bettor. New and existing users get an additional shot at the payout every day you bet the tournament. So if you want your shot at becoming a millionaire or even a thousandaire, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app using the promo code JGM so they know that I sent you. Again, FanDuel's already given away $1 million, and they're going to give away another $1 million before the end of the tournament. That's FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code JGM. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. No purchase necessary. Restrictions apply. For $1 million drawing risk-free offer for first online real money wager only. Site credit is non-withdrawable and expires 14 days after receipt. Terms apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. For problem gambling support, call 1-800-889-9789. It's official, according to every NFL insider out there. It's official. The NFL has added the 17th game this season. So, for example, the Titans will host the New Orleans Saints. The way this is going to work out is that every AFC team will get an extra home game in 2021. Every NFL team will get every AFC team will get an extra home game. Next year, the NFC will get the home game, but they're going to match up your division with where you ranked. So the Titans were first in the AFC South, so they will face New Orleans, who was first in the NFC South. Where is this good? Because now the Indianapolis Colts get an extra game against the defending champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I love it. Because I don't think much of Indianapolis right now. I don't think much of Carson Wentz as their starting quarterback. And I definitely don't think, even in the Dome, I don't think Carson Wentz in Indianapolis is beating Tom Brady and the defending Super Bowl champions. Now, I have no idea what to think about the Saints. I mean, it's like nobody wants to say the Saints will be bad next year, but shouldn't we at least entertain the possibility that the Saints aren't going to be a good team next year?
Especially without Drew Brees.
That's why. I mean, this time last year, nobody was willing to say, maybe the Patriots are going to be bad this upcoming season. It was like, no, we had too much respect for Belichick. We had too much belief that, hey, Bill's been preparing for life after Tom. Bill's been doing this for years. Bill is going to have a good team. Now, they may not be a Super Bowl contender without Tom, but Bill will have a good team. That Patriots team was terrible. Should we not feel the same way about the Saints? That maybe a team that just gutted its roster because of salary cap problems, lost their Hall of Fame quarterback, and are now entering next season with a combination of Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston at quarterback might not be very good. I remember when they played the Saints a couple years ago, and Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas came in here and just lit the Titans up. And it was a good game until Jerome Boger and his crew just totally screwed it up. But I guess what I'm telling you, or what I'm thinking in my head is, on paper, the Titans should beat the New Orleans Saints as of right now. Now, we know the Saints have a good personnel department. We know that they normally draft pretty well. We know that Sean Payton's a good coach, and he's probably been planning for years on how to deploy Taysom Hill when he's the starting quarterback. But they don't have Drew Brees. They don't have Drew Brees. They don't have anything close to Drew Brees. Indianapolis gets Tampa Bay. To me, that's a big win. Jacksonville, they will get a win when they play Atlanta. Houston, get on me right now. I can't tell you anything about Houston. Houston's such a mess. I can't tell you one way or another what's going to happen with them, but they get Carolina. But I'm not worried about Jacksonville this year, and I'm not worried about Houston this year. I'm worried about Indianapolis. So, Indy you normally get a better schedule by being the second place team. But because Tampa Bay was a wild card, Indianapolis gets Tampa Bay, you get New Orleans. I think that's a net positive. It should be noted that apparently Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, says now that the regular season is officially 17 games, when might the NFL extend it again? He says not under the current CBA, which runs through March of 2031. The league and or clubs shall not increase the number of regular season games per club to 18 or more games. Now, the one thing I will say is this. If the players want to do it, if the owners have some negotiating chip and can take it to the players to do it, then you can have 18 games. But I think I'm okay with this being this way of, hey, it'll be 17 games. And I like the 17th game. I said yesterday, these players that are going to come out and say, no, they're not worried about our safety by making us play an extra game. I'm going to say, look, half the teams in the league don't even take the 15th, 16th, 14th game. They don't take those games seriously once they know they suck. Remember when the Lions came in here in December? Come on now. Jacksonville, come on. So forget about those teams. They don't even take those games seriously. But it's good for everybody else. It's good for TV. It's good for the league. It's good for the fans. It's good for the sports talk radio hosts. It's good for those who host the pregame show. It's good for your bars and restaurants. It's good for everybody else. Kinston texts into the text line and said, Jared, by your logic of not drafting for need, should the Titans take Najee Harris? That doesn't make sense. Draft the best available player at a position of need. Let me ask you this question. if they had drafted, and remember that after Mariota's second year, he threw 26 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. And people believed that he was on his way to being a franchise quarterback. If they had drafted Deshaun Watson with the 5th overall pick, people would have been mad. If they had drafted Patrick Mahomes with the 5th overall pick, people would have been mad. But in the long haul, would you have been upset with it? Mariota's got hurt enough that we would have seen Mahomes on the field, and then Mariota would have been gone. So I'm not saying draft Najee Harris, but I do like Najee Harris. If he's the best player on your board, I would just say, hey, I wouldn't be. If Robinson drafts at a position of need, then I'll know, or a position that's not of need, then I'll know that he really likes that player. Michael texts in and says, hey, Jared, haven't heard you discuss right tackle at all. Are you comfortable with the current situation, expecting a veteran addition, or do you want the Titans to find a right tackle in the early rounds? As of right now, I'm okay with Sam Brilo and Kendall Lamb. I heard one is more athletic, the other is more powerful. When Sam Brilo filled in for Lawan, I got the idea that he could start in the NFL if he had to, which is the same thing we realized about Dennis Kelly, which was when he came in, hey, if he's got to start, he can start. I guess the difference here is that eventually they will need to address the long-term situation at right tackle. They tried last year. It blew up in their face. At some point, they will need to address it. I'm not sure they address it now, though there will be tackles available. I mean, I was reading Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network, and he's got tackles that'll be available. For example, Jalen Mayfield is a right tackle. He's got ranked as the 25th best player. Christian Darrisaw is a tackle out of Virginia Tech. He's the 26th best player. And Tevin Jenkins is a right tackle out of Oklahoma State, who they've got ranked as the 30th best player. So there will be right tackles available, or at least right tackle prospects available in this draft. Cody says, if Surtain is there at 22, the Titans have, in all caps, have to take him. Otherwise, trade back. No dominant pass rusher in the draft, so no major lapse in talent between first and second round edge rushers. Mostly drafting on potential there. The Titans can't afford to draft on a potential this year, a la Isaiah Wilson. I understand the idea that last year they drafted on a guy with potential and it didn't work out because he had off-the-field issues. I still think you have to draft on potential. If you don't draft on potential, you're just drafting on what guys are right now. In 3 years, everybody else will beat you with their 21 draft class. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I will get to my basketball thoughts. We'll do that coming up next here on the program because there's one thing I kind of hate. Like if I was a parent, I think I would hate the message that I'm seeing in basketball. Tune in later on in the show as we will reveal a keyword for you to text into the game text line for your chance to win the T-Mobile Hockey Homegate giveaway. A Dos Equis prize pack, which includes a case of beer, dessert from Nothing Bundt Cakes, a T-Mobile prize pack, and food provided by 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. You must be 21 or older to enter. Stillman and Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving. We are streaming on YouTube. We are streaming on Twitch. We are streaming on Periscope. We are streaming on Twitter. And I'm sure we're probably streaming somewhere else. It's ESPN 1025, The Game.
It's over. The dream is alive for Houston. For the first time in 37 years, the Cougars are going to the Final Four.
Proud of these kids, proud of the heart, proud of battling through so many things this year, whether it was injuries or transfers or a tough loss here or there. But for this team to be 28-3 and going to the Final Four, this is one of the greatest accomplishments I've been around. And I have this group of players and this staff, everyone on this staff, all the players to thank for it. I'm glad they let me go along on the ride with them.
Kelvin Sampson, the head coach at Houston, going to the Final Four. I believe this is his first Final Four appearance since 2002? Maybe 2001. I think 2002, when he was the head coach at Oklahoma. And I believe they went all the way to the Final Four, lost to Indiana. Maryland ended up beating Indiana that year. And then Kelvin Sampson went to Indiana, and he got fired for cheating. And I'm not one to sit up here and sit back and be Mr. Morals and say, hey, because to me in college basketball, cheating has really elevated, right? Like Kelvin Sampson was calling Robbie Hummel on the phone too much. Guys are now, like Will Wade, is openly paying players. And nobody has any problem with that. But it bothers me that in college basketball, because I heard Chase talk about Kelvin Sampson. It was like, Indiana had him once, as if Indiana chose to fire Kelvin Sampson. They had no choice but to fire Kelvin Sampson. And it's the cheating schools. And I know this is an argument that is as old as time. But the last couple of years in basketball have really brought this up. It is the cheating school that gets punished. It is not the cheating coach. Bruce Pearl cheats. And even though he loses his job, he's in the Final Four with Auburn. Kelvin Sampson cheats. He's in the Final Four with Houston. John Calipari cheats at Memphis. Derrick Rose, I don't know who took that ACT. Calipari's in the Final Four for years and wins a title at Kentucky. Rick Pitino, he gets caught cheating twice. He gets fired. His school can't get back into the NCAA tournament, and he's making it with Iona. I don't think that college basketball should be what defines morals for everybody else. And I think everybody does cheat in college basketball, though I don't take that as an excuse. But it just seems like it's the cheaters who get off scot-free and end up winning in the end. And it's the cheating schools who are standing there with their hands out like, we're Indiana. We don't know if we're ever going to be a good basketball school ever again. I mean, where is the outrage? Or I shouldn't say outrage, but what's the way to compound this, right? You're an SEC school. Now you're afraid to get caught cheating. The SEC, the NCAA, they send out all these memorandums that say, do not cheat. And I'm preparing to play Bruce Pearl and Auburn. I'm preparing to play Will Wade and LSU. You know how Will Wade got those players. You know how Bruce Pearl got those players. You know how John Calipari got those players. You know how Kelvin Sampson got those players at Houston. No offense, but this is Houston. They're in the American Athletic Conference. This is not the days of Phi Slamma Jamma. And I'm just sitting there watching Wayne Tinkle, my coach at Oregon State, and I'm watching him, a guy who, at least for the record, does it the honest way, and he's trying to take on Kelvin Sampson. And I look at Indiana, and their basketball program is such a mess right now that they can't even hire a coach. They hired an NBA coach who can't coach, and he's going to come to college? I mean, oh my goodness. I feel bad for these schools. I feel bad for the Tennessee basketballs who have their dream coach in Bruce Pearl, are forced into firing him because he's kind of a problem, fires Bruce Pearl, and then all of a sudden Bruce is the one in the Final Four and Tennessee's the one that can't get past the Sweet 16. That bothers me. It bothers me to watch an SEC championship game against Alabama and LSU, where I'm sitting there looking at LSU's coach, and I'm thinking, how does this guy have a job? How does this guy? It is on wiretap of him paying players, and he's got a job. Kansas got a job. Arizona got a job. So I don't know what the solution here is. The NCAA throws out show causes, so a guy has to go to ESPN or CBS for a couple of years, call some games on the radio, and then next thing you know, he's back at coaching and he's back to cheating. It's a it's like a tough sell to me. I don't think people are quitting on college basketball because they know it's dirty, but I certainly don't think it's helping the sport.
So does that mean they need to relax the rules or make them stricter? Which way do you think they should go?
I wonder if you're a school, right? Like if you're Indiana and you think Kelvin Sampson is your coach, and I don't know what I don't know what the feelings at Indiana were when Sampson was the coach. I remember when he left, and Tom Crean inherited a mess. All the players left all at once. All the recruits left all at once. They had all these bans and all these tournament bans and scholarship reductions, and everything was bad. A buddy of mine who played basketball in high school here in Nashville was a freshman at IU when Sampson got fired and Crean came in. He said somebody asked him if he'd like to walk onto the basketball team. That's how bad it was at Indiana. So I don't know what they thought about Sampson before he got caught. But if you're a school, aren't you better off just waiting it out? Like if you're Tennessee, like what the Boston Red Sox did when their manager got fired for cheating in that trash can banging scandal, which was we're going to promote the bench coach. He's going to be the interim manager for a year. And then once Major League Baseball and everybody else stops caring about this, we're going to hire him back to be the manager. And there will be one day where people are mad, and then after that, everybody will be back onto their lives. Like if Tennessee had waited for Bruce Pearl's show cause to end and said, Bruce, we're going to promote Johnny Joe to be the head coach while you're gone. Then we plan to fire Johnny Joe and bring you back as coach. I think you would have done it. I think the fans would have loved it. And I think that's probably the next step here. LSU has enough to fire Will Wade. If Will Wade as much as angers anybody, I don't even know if Tennessee has enough to really fire Jeremy Pruitt like they claim they do. But I know LSU has enough to fire Will Wade. If LSU decides, if the chancellor at LSU rolls over in bed, decides, you know what, I don't like Will Wade anymore. He's not winning enough. Let's fire him. They're going to fire him for cause, and they're going to win. But I also think there's a part of LSU that's like, well, nobody's come to us yet. Nobody's put a show cause on us. Nobody has sent us a notice of allegations. So we're just going to keep our coach. Rick Pitino, and again, I'm not advocating that Rick Pitino is Mr. Moral, but Rick Pitino wanted to stay. Rick Pitino's ignorance claim of, I didn't know about the hookers. I didn't know about the $100,000 that they offered. If they had kept, I will tell you this right now, as a Louisville fan and as somebody who was in the media there and as somebody who still goes on the air there, I will tell you right now, if you were to ask 100 Louisville fans, would they still take Rick Pitino as their coach today over the guy they have now? 65 would say yes. And I'm just throwing that out there. Would it have been that wrong? I mean, Chris Mack is an average coach. He is not Rick Pitino. Would it have been worth it? You missed the tournament for a year. Everybody gets up in arms. How can you keep Rick Pitino after all these scandals? And then Rick takes you back to the Final Four. I mean, to me, college basketball is telling us, hey, you ain't cheating, ain't trying. If you get caught cheating, once you do the crime, do the time, bring the guy back, get on and win. Kelvin Sampson, John Calipari, Will Wade, Rick Pitino, North Carolina, Kansas, Arizona. I mean, where is the integrity in this sport? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, it is mock draft season. We are less than a month away from the NFL draft. And coming up, Joe Rexrode. I don't know if you've seen this. Joe Rexrode in The Athletic has mocked all 7 rounds for the Titans. We'll break that down next. Stillman and Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. ESPN 102.5 The Game is kicking off every weekend with free beer. Who doesn't love free beer? Tune in all day Friday for your chance to win a $25 gift card from Bavarian Beer House located in the Opry Mills Mall. Stillman and Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 102.5. The Game streaming live now on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, Twitter, you name it. It's out there. Just pull it up. Just go to your smart TV, go to your phone, go to the YouTube app. Just click it, and you will see us live from the wholesaling studio, which is powered by RumbleOn.com. It is draft season. By the way, my brother just sent me during the break, sent me this nicest text asking me if I was going to get myself vaccinated by mid-April. I said, well, yeah, I mean, I'm getting my shot next week. And he said he got me a ticket for the Braves-Nationals game. He lives in Washington, D.C. He got me a ticket for the Braves-Nationals game in March or May, and said it's only limited to 5,000 fans. And I was like, man, that is really, really sweet of him. So I just want to throw that out there.
That ought to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, I get, as I said, hey, let me get off the radio, tonight and look at what I got going on then. But yeah, for sure. Very, very nice of him. And I encourage everybody to get vaccinated. So there's that. So Joe Rexrode, bad take Joe. And let's be honest, Joe has been on a heater with some bad takes. But he's got a 7-round mock draft. So I don't know. The Athletic has like a full draft. And I don't know if all the Athletic writers had to sit there because I haven't clicked the Athletic page. When I pulled up the Athletics Titans page today just to see what they had written, I saw the full 7-round mock draft. But then I saw Joe's 7-round Titans draft, so I figured, yeah, these are probably the same picks, and it tells me who the Titans are taking, which I probably care about more than anything else. So I clicked that. So here's Joe's 7-round mock draft. He'll join us in 30 minutes. But as Joe writes, this is the full 7-round, 9-pick mock draft. So his first pick is 22nd overall. He has the Titans taking J.C. Horn, the corner out of South Carolina. Joe writes, quote, am I being too optimistic to think that Horn will still be there at 22? Maybe, especially after the son of former NFL receiver Joe Horn lit it up at his pro day, running a 4.39 in the 40-yard dash and showing a 41.5-inch vertical. But he's got J.C. Horn, South Carolina in the first round. Ian, I think that we would say that that's probably a pretty good pick. Considering their needs.
I would say so.
Yeah, considering their needs and how good we assume J.C. Horn is. Mel Kiper Jr. has him ranked 18th on his big board. Okay. 53rd overall in the second round, Rondale Moore out of Purdue. Joe writes, if Horn at 22 is optimistic, Moore at 53 may be optimistic from his perspective. Analysts are all over the map on how he projects in the NFL, with Dane Brugler from The Athletic calling him, quote, an explosive athlete who can create with the ball in his hands, and a prospect who could end up in the first round. When I see these receivers, Bateman at Minnesota and Moore at Purdue, I think that those guys remind me of DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown from this standpoint. Athletically and production-wise, they've done enough to be in the first round. But for some reason, they're just not considered first-round guys. Hollywood Brown was considered a first-round guy. He had the speed and the production at Oklahoma, and hey, Hollywood Brown, first-round guy. A.J. Brown was like a fringe first-rounder, and everybody liked his body and they liked his size, and boy, did he put up the numbers at Ole Miss. And same with DK Metcalf. They loved his vertical speed. They loved, his body. He was a fit freak. And so I look at Bateman and Moore as those kind of players. I've always liked Rondale Moore. I thought when he was a freshman at Purdue, was one of the best players in the country. So Joe has him with the 2nd-round pick. Do we like that, Ian?
I think I do, yeah. And from what I can tell by listening to Robbie and Rexroad, Joe loves him some Rondale Moore.
Well, Joe's a Big Ten guy, and Rondale Moore's in the Big Ten. And so, the thing you got to learn about Joe, and we'll have Joe on, so we'll probably argue or we'll something. The thing you got to realize about Joe is he's, 1, a basketball guy, and 2, a Big Ten guy. Now, he knows football, he knows hockey, he knows, but if he can get an opportunity to talk to you about basketball, he will find a way. And if he can get a way to talk to you about the Big Ten, he will find a way. So that's why I think he loves Bateman and Moore so much. But I think they're good players. 3rd round, 85th overall, Joe goes with Brevin Jordan, a tight end, 6'3", 245, out of Miami. Now, I will tell you this, At the tight end position, in my head with the draft, there's one first-round guy, Kyle Pitts out of Florida. Titans will have no chance to draft him. There's one second-round guy, Tommy Tremble, tight end out of Notre Dame. He sounds like the perfect guy the Titans need because he is a blocker first. I don't think the Titans will take a tight end in the second round. Once you get to the third round, it's all the Jonnu Smith type guys. The athletic, 6'3", 245, 6'5", 255, those kind of players that are going to need some time. So Joe drafts a tight end, Brevin Jordan, in the third round. He said, quote, the Titans don't really have a number one tight end right now that Jonnu Smith has moved on to his massive deal with the Patriots, though they have both aspects of his position covered in re-signing Anthony Ferkser for receiving and Jeff Swaim for blocking. They need someone like Smith who can do both, and that's not really Jordan, at least not yet. So a third-round tight end, but the guy probably won't be ready right now. Ian, do we like that pick?
Well, you do have a point. He probably would not be a starter right off the bat. He would have to work his way in, figure out, the system a little bit more and the offense. But it is a need. And, Jonnu was a third-round pick, as you mentioned. And to lose Jonnu and maybe grab another third-round pick, kind of start that cycle over, seems like it could be a decent plan.
Well, I would just argue, though, that backup tight end is not a need. I mean, the position they've got to fill is starting tight end. Backup tight end is not a position to fill right now.
I guess they have Swaim and Ferkser who can probably do that.
And I think those guys are backups. I mean,
Right.
I think they need a guy who on first down can be on the field and on third down can be on the field.
But at this point, I don't know where you're going to find a starter unless you draft him first or second round.
Unless it's Tommy Tremble out of Notre Dame. Or, I guess, in theory, after the draft.
If somebody gets cut, yeah.
Sure. A June 1st cut, trade. I think that they could do that, and I still think they have the ability to restructure Ryan Tannehill's contract in their back pocket. So I think they're holding on to that, hey, if we need to create more cap space, this is how we'll do it. This is when we'll do it. This is why we'll do it. Then third round, 100th overall, Joe's got Joseph Asai from Texas. Now, I got a hard time understanding how a guy who Dane Brugler has on his big board at 46 would last until the 100th pick. But then again, what do those guys know? I remember I had the Athlon Sports NFL draft guide, and the Titans drafted Darrington Evans in the third round, and they didn't have any information on him. I'm like, wait a minute, who is this guy they're drafting? I mean, he's not even in the book. So those guys don't really know what the boards are, and they don't know what the board lines up. So maybe Asai would be available with the 100th overall pick, and I believe Joe was just kind of going with, it was a legitimate mock draft of every guy that covers every team making the picks. But the thing that stands out to me is Joe is waiting until the fourth pick of this draft to draft a pass rusher. Has Bud Dupree really changed things that much? I'm not here to bag on Joe. But has the addition of Bud Dupree really changed everything that now we can sit there and say, yeah, go ahead and make 3 picks before you pick a pass rusher? I don't feel that way. Like, I look at that position, and I think Harold Landry last year, they did him a disservice by playing him as much as they did on the field. That Harold Landry needs to go down from like 95% of the snaps to 70% of the snaps, and that way he can get a rest, and he can still be a player in the fourth quarter.
They kind of even talked about doing that, but that plan never really played itself out.
They talked about doing it before the season, and then they went out of their way to not do it.
Yeah.
So, but maybe that's the thing. Maybe Vrabel thinks, no, Harold can suck it up. Harold and Bud can suck it up, and they can play the whole game. I don't like it. I think that they should draft. I think with those 4 picks, 2 of them should be pass rushers. Now, again, you got to let the board play. You got to let the board play you or come to you, and you can't just go ahead and start taking the 67th best player with the 53rd pick. But I think they need pass rushers. And if that means moving back and getting more picks and then picking another pass rusher, I think they need to do it. Waiting until the 100th pick, I'm not sure I like that. In the 4th round, Joe's got Alaric Jackson, a tackle/guard from Iowa. In the 5th round, he's got Kyrus Tonga, a defensive tackle out of BYU. In the 6th round, Jonathan Adams, a wide receiver, Arkansas State. I can't wait. Joe's going to come on the show later today. What the hell does Joe know about Jonathan Adams from Arkansas State? And I'm not sitting here saying that Joe doesn't know anything. I just literally am saying, what does he know about this guy? I've never heard of this guy. Sixth round, he goes Richard LeCount III, a safety out of Georgia. I feel like I've heard that name enough. Seventh round, 232 from the Falcons through the Dolphins. He goes Bryce Thompson, a corner from Tennessee. I'll say this, Bryce Thompson's not going to play in the NFL. Like, he's not going to be on the field and matter in the NFL. But, hey, if that's what Joe wants to do, that's what Joe wants to do. So that's his seventh-round mock draft. I still can't get over the idea of waiting until your fourth pick to go for a pass rusher. I think they have got to go pass rusher before that. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. Joe has a tight end in the third round. Am I wrong for being anxious at looking at this draft and being worried about what the plan at tight end is? We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. TriStar Moving, they are the official partners of this show. They are my official movers. Everybody, including me and you, hates moving. Everybody hates moving, but not when you use my friends at TriStar Moving. At TriStar, you'll get 5-star service throughout the entire process. That's why their motto is TriStar Moving with 5-star service. Everything was taken care of, from covering the floors, banisters, railings, the front door thresholds, the door itself, to wrapping and protecting all of the furniture and putting my TVs in protective boxes. They offer a brand new state-of-the-art storage facility in case you need a safe place for all of your stuff. The owners, Garrett and Robert, are true Nashvillians, and they care about helping this community and you any way that they can. So if you're looking to move, give my friends at TriStar Moving a call, 615-640-1219, or visit their website at nashvillemoving.org/radio. They'll give you 5% off your entire move. That's nashvillemoving.org/radio. Tell them Jared Stillman sent you. My official movers, TriStar Moving.
All 4 of your tight ends from last year's team, free agents. You've re-signed 2 of them, Jeff Swaim, who was the newest, and Anthony Ferkser, who's been with you for 3 seasons now. Those 2 guys, priorities for the Titans. Why do they fit in that core so well for you going forward?
Yeah, 2 different, stylistically, the way they play the game, the way that we use them, the way that they help our football team. They're different players. Jeff's more of an on the ball, into the line of scrimmage. He likes to block. He likes it gritty. He likes it dirty. But he's a big target. He made some big catches for us, in the 2020 season. And Ferkser's, he's good in the slot. He's money on third down. You can sift him around and move him around on some different types of blocks than we use Jeff at. And that tandem back with us was important for us.
That was John Robinson. Hey, they can kind of do some different things, right? But when Anthony Ferkser goes onto the field, you're telling the defense, hey, defense, we are passing. And when Jeff Swaim goes onto the field, you are saying, hey, defense, there's a 75% chance we're running. And I don't like that. I think the Titans have got to find a tight end somewhere. Text her into the text line. Again, Joe Rexroad goes 3rd round, Brevin Jordan for the tight end. But text her to the text line. Jacob says the Titans have to trade up to go get Tommy Tremble. And that would be trading up or using the pick into the 2nd round or doing something to get Tommy Tremble. I love the idea of trading back in this draft, but I hate the idea of going out and using the draft to go get your tight end right now. I hate forcing John Robinson into a position to where he has to draft a position of need. And these 3rd and 4th round tight ends, those guys are all going to be projects. Every single one of them. You're not going to be able to draft Kyle Pitts. I still think that, you got to go pass rusher, even though, again, I hate drafting for need. I still think they need, I think you've got more talented pass rushers that you need on this roster more than you need a talented tight end. And yet, I am concerned about what they're going to do at the tight end position. Now, the one good thing I like about this draft, and this is, again, why trading down seems to me to feel like it might be the sweet spot if one of those top corners, J.C. Horn, Caleb Farley, Virginia Tech, Patrick Surtain II, Alabama, Greg Newsome, Northwestern, if one of those guys aren't there, TD was talking about the depth of the corner position in this draft. Here's what he said. Or we'll get that for you. But he was saying, hey, 2nd round, there are going to be guys that you can go get. And this is what he said.
Yeah, they could wait to the 2nd round. Elijah Molden, and I classify him as a DB because he could play safety or corner. But, if they want to go ahead and lock Fulton in on the outside, Molden would be an awesome nickel guy for them. You know what I'm saying? But even like Newsome, he's fun to watch. My only question with Newsome is I wish he would have been healthy for the Ohio State game so I could see him go against, some top level wide receivers, right? Because you watch the Nebraska game, hey, man, he was in that guy's jersey the whole time. But, these receivers aren't top-tier guys. I want to see him going against Chris Olave and holding him down. So I think that's something that will be a little bit of a crutch for your evaluation against Newsome, but the guy's a really good player. So he's somebody that I think at 22 even wouldn't be a bad option at all. They would actually be fortunate to get him.
So TD's saying, hey, there's going to be corners. And we know they need corners. We know they need pass rushers. We know they need tight end. We know they need a receiver. And yet I keep – somebody texted me and said, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. At one point you're saying don't draft for need. At the other, you're looking at Joe's mock draft and saying, where are the pass rushers? And I would agree. It is like the definition of rock in a hard place to try to figure out what the Titans should do. It feels to me as if the sweet spot in this draft is going to be in the 2nd round. That if this were the year where you could make the trade with the Rams, where you could trade back, get a 1st-round pick, and get a 1st round the next year, but get those 2 extra 2nd-round picks, one of which was Derrick Henry, this would be the year that you'd want to do it. That this year you could really go bang, bang with the receiver you want or a receiver you feel like could come in and play, the tight end that you feel like could come in and play if it's Tommy Tremble, the corner that you feel like could play that's not one of the top guys, but you feel like could play, and a pass rusher. And that's, I'm kind of stuck here. I think I worry more. I think I look at pass rusher as more of the immediate need to fill. Like if I was sitting there at the draft and I was sitting at 52 and I had guys with equal grades, one was a tight end, one was a pass rusher, I'd take the pass rusher. Brian says, I'm not saying that Bud Dupree and Harold Landry solved the pass rush, but the Titans have more holes to fill. You need to fill those holes in the draft, but I wouldn't use more than one pick in the first 4 to draft a pass rusher. I just think pass rusher is just more important. Is third wide receiver, because that's the wide receiver hole right now. Right now the depth chart is A.J. Brown number 1, Josh Reynolds number 2, Cameron Batson, if they had to play a game today, I think Cameron Batson's the slot. Marcus Johnson, who they signed off the Colts last year, who I don't think much of, but Marcus Johnson would be 4. And you can kind of figure out 5th receiver along the way. Probably somebody, Rashard Davis right now would probably be the guy because he returns punts and kicks. I'm not saying I love going into a game with that, but I think I can win with Derrick Henry as my running back and those 4 as my wide receiver group. It's not as big as, to me, pass rusher. I would just love the idea of, okay, you take 3 pass rushers with the first 4 picks, and 2 of those guys are Pro Bowlers. Good. Solved. Never have to sit there and say, how are the Titans going to get a pass rush? Or if the other team wants to play keep away and Bud Dupree and Harold Landry have to come off the field because, again, we don't want them playing 99% of the snaps like Vrabel made Landry play last year. If you put yourself in that spot with these draft picks, those guys come in right away. Now in the fourth quarter, you've got a rested Bud Dupree, you've got a rested Harold Landry, and then, of course, knock on wood, there's injuries. Injuries have hit the Titans' outside linebackers over the last couple of years. It forced a trade for Kamalei Correa. It forced a trade of Kamalei Correa. It forced the movement for all those guys we had never heard of last year with Wyatt Ray and Tuzar Skipper and Brooks Reed and guys off the practice squad after the Titans realized that Clowney was never going to play for them. It's a tough spot. I mean, I'm looking at this right now, and I'm thinking maybe they've got a trick up their sleeve with this Tannehill restructure to fix tight end and allow them to focus on defense. Because I still would say, again, and I'm not a need guy, if the best player on the board is a running back at 22, you have to take the best player on the board. You always have to take the best player on the board. Let me say that. If I walked into a draft room today, first thing I'd put is best player on the board. But I do feel like, hey, if they just spend all their good draft capital on defense, and worry about wide receiver, worry about depth on offensive line, and worry about tight end later, I feel like they will have rebuilt the defense that was terrible last year, and that will give them enough of a shot. So I don't know. Joe in his draft goes with a receiver in the second round. He goes with a corner in the first round. He goes with a pass rusher and a tight end. I mean, it was a very even offense and defense. He will join us next to discuss how he came up with these 9 guys for the Titans. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Speaking of Joe, tune in to Robbie and Rex Road every weekday morning at 8:45 when the Preds have a game day this season for your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. And you can win a prize pack brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. Your next chance to participate is Thursday morning. Stillman and Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Mock draft season is upon us. Maybe this is crazy, but it just hit me yesterday, I think, on the 29th, that we're less than a month away from the NFL draft. I mean, I was really thinking about this yesterday, and I was thinking about, man, we are less than a month away from the draft. Now, maybe last year it was because everybody was in quarantine and there was nothing. I mean, nothing on television. You want to watch sports like last night, no Preds game, but if you want to watch sports, you had a good men's basketball game that was very well coached, I should say. An awesome women's basketball game. You had all kinds of hockey and NBA, and it's all on. This time last year, if you want to watch sports, it was the 2006 World Series Game 4. Great. So maybe the draft is just coming at us faster than ever. Joe Rexrode has a 7-round Titans mock draft up on The Athletic. Joe Rexrode joins us now. Joe, how did you come about deciding, okay, I'm going to do a 7-round mock draft for the Titans as part of The Athletic's, draft preview or whatever, and this is how I'm going to target certain guys. Like, before you sat down and you actually did this mock draft, what did you think about before doing it?
Well, I called every GM in the league, and I asked who they're going to pick, and then
they were honest with you.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a fair idea of what everybody's going to do. But no, first of all, how did I come about doing it? I was told to do it, so I did it.
Makes
and
sense.
Basically, it's like what I did was I looked at a bunch of players and rankings and where people are projected, and took a stab at, look, the thing with these is it's a lot easier early, right? Because you have a pretty strong feeling for who are the best players at the various positions and, the needs of the team in question. And then later, a lot of it was just going through lists and like, okay, well, most people have this guy around a 6th-round range, so it seems reasonable that he would be here. And I really, at the end, it's basically like, okay, what positions are you filling in? Now, my draft, I had 2 corners, I had 2 receivers. I didn't have an inside linebacker. Maybe that's ridiculous. I had a defensive lineman, which is debatable. If you look at, the fact that they signed Autry, maybe and who knows, they may end up re-signing Daquan Jones. I haven't seen him land anywhere yet. They may like Pierre Tart and Laurel Murchison a lot, so maybe that's a bad guess on my part. And also, then I think my draft, frankly, was a little bit optimistic because Joseph Asai from Texas, I have them taking him, I think, with the pick 100, right? Who knows?
The second, 3rd round pick.
Yeah, he could go way higher than that. But you know what? If you're going to do a mock draft, why not have a fantastically optimistic mock draft, right?
So was this tied in with the rest of the Athletic writers, or was this just like, Joe, give me 7 names?
Yeah, no, it was do your team. As far as I know, there may be like 7 other writers who had their teams picking Rondale Moore,
Okay.
Which, by the way, like that's of course why he was the photo. He's like my guy in this draft who I think could be special in this league, and I think could be a dynamic addition to the Titans that gives them something they haven't had. One, just he's a tremendous speed, but also, kind of like a Humphreys, but with explosive yard after catch potential. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Rondale Moore, even though he's like 5'7".
So I don't think that you have J.C. Horn going the corner out of South Carolina with the 22nd pick in the 1st round. I was looking at Mel Kiper's big board today, and he's got 4 corners from 15 to 21. Again, the Titans are picking at 22. Caleb Farley, Virginia Tech, though I think there's some red flags in the medical there with Farley. Patrick Surtain, Alabama at 17. J.C. Horn, 18 on Mel's board. Greg Newsome, Northwestern at 21. There's a part of me that thinks somebody's going to get overdrafted. These quarterbacks are going to get overdrafted. One of these guys is going to fall to the Titans at 22. I don't think it'll be J.C. Horn, but I think it'll be maybe one of these corners falls to them at 22. Maybe they don't. I wonder how they're approaching that pick, that if a guy like Horn isn't there, Do they go with the best pass rusher who fits their needs at that spot? Do they take the best player on the board, even if it's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame that probably doesn't really fit a need of theirs? I mean, I look at 22 and I'm like, they'll have options, but I'm just not sure what those options will be.
Well, and maybe they love Rashad Bateman, because I think we all would agree that those top three receivers are, the SEC receivers are all going to go high, and then there should be quite a gap. Maybe there's one. I mean, Mel Kiper had him taking Tony there, right? Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Maybe there's one of those receivers they cover, or like you said, one of those edge guys, and if that's the case, great. Another thing I really think is possible is trading out of there and moving down. But I mean, I guess that really, a lot of that has to do with, I think, the corner situation you mentioned. I mean, I think they have to have a starter, like at corner. I mean, they can get by at receiver early in the season probably, if they don't have one who's absolutely plug and play ready to go. But I don't see how they can survive without a starting cornerback out of this draft, ready to go,
So you're not buying the Kevin Johnson edition as the slot guy and Jenkins on one side and Fulton on the other?
Well, that may be how it starts, but it won't be good if it is. I mean, I'm buying that as a possibility. I'm also buying what I've seen from Kevin Johnson in his time in the league, and he should be a reserve on your team if you'd like to play good defense. So
Joe Rexrode is our guest. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so I mean, I really think that's urgent to get a starting corner. And so maybe it's actually, okay, well, you have to move up to 18 or whatever to get your guy at corner. I heard you yesterday, and I mean, I agree that John Robinson has been too willing to draft injured guys. It has worked out pretty well with Jeffrey Simmons, but the Caleb Farley thing's a little bit scary.
Joe Rexrode is our guest. I would argue the pick I did not like in your mock draft was Brevin Jordan, the tight end out of Miami, with that first third-round pick. And it's for a couple reasons. Number one, I feel like the need for the Titans is at starting tight end, not at backup tight end. And I look at Brevin Jordan, or the type of tight ends that will be available with that pick, and I think those are Jonnu Smith-type guys, where they have the size, they have the speed, but it's going to take them a couple of years to be ready to start and to produce at the Jonnu level. I just think they need a guy that can both catch and block, and that guy has to start for this team because the other guys can only do one or the other, and it's going to tip off the defense too much if they just keep running Anthony Ferkser out there on 2nd down and 9.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think Brevin Jordan would be probably something like a Jonnu Smith, a bit of a project in the run game, who eventually earns more of a role, and maybe that's not ideal. Although I think he's talented enough to be a part of the passing game next year. Maybe it would be, and that maybe you flip flop that, and if you like Osai or in the way I have it set up, someone else as an edge rusher, and a guy like Tommy Tremble from Notre Dame is a better choice for you. I think he might be available, later. And that's a guy who, by all accounts, at least from a blocking inline perspective, is ready to come in and compete in this league. Now, does that mean that he's the starter for this team? I don't know. Maybe Jeff Swaim is the starter, at this point. There's another guy, by the way, who hasn't signed anywhere else. And to me, if it worked out and you were able to do it at a low rate, I mean, I think Michael Pruitt would absolutely be worth bringing back in if he's healthy and everything. And then you'd have 3 guys. You wouldn't really have a clear one, but at least you'd have more versatility and depth in guys who know the system.
Joe Rexrode is our guest. The pick I liked that you made was the Rondale Moore pick out of Purdue in the 2nd round. And I read what you wrote, and I read it on the air, the idea that Moore is all over the board, and that there are some guys that say he could be a first-rounder, some guys that could say he's a third-rounder. I look at him and Bateman, the wide receiver out of Minnesota. The Big Ten had such a weird year this year that it makes me a little cautious on taking Big Ten guys, but it also makes me think that, hey, if Rondale Moore had a real year this season, he might be a legitimate first-round pick. I thought when he was a freshman, he was the best receiver in the country. at Purdue. He's got the speed. That's a pick I like. When I see wide receiver and I see Titans and I know it's a need, especially in that slot position, I just think give me a guy who's fast. That's the thing I think with John Robinson. I wonder, do you actually believe that teams will look at Big Ten guys like Bateman and Moore and maybe knock them back a few pegs because of the weird, funky COVID Big Ten season?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a case-by-case basis. I mean, with Moore, he opted out at first. So I think he ended up playing, 3 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had a whole bunch of catches, but he had it was 7.7 per catch. But if you watch Purdue, it's basically he was like a running back for them. I mean, all they did with him was slants or screens. It's boom, get the ball in his hands, and let him go. And obviously defenses must have done a pretty good job of this year against that. But like you said, anybody who watched the game against Ohio State in 2018, that in particular, that was a freshman wide receiver dominating a game against, one of the top 3 most talented teams in the sport year after year. I mean, he was unbelievable. Then he had the hamstring as a sophomore, and that really limited his year. Like we had TD on, Teron Davenport, on our show, I think last week, and that was what he brought up was, if people feel good about him being healthy, that might be the question. But, I mean, this year it was just limited exposure because, again, he opted in later into the season. So I don't know if that's going to knock him down, but I do think I think a big question with him is route running. Like, can he do more than what Purdue did with him? Can he be more than that? I just think the speed, the shiftiness, and the power in breaking tackles, too, after the catch. He's just a dynamic player. And I could be wrong on him, but I think somewhere in the NFL next year, people are going to be talking about Rondale Moore.
Joe Rexrode's our guest. One thing that bothered me about your mock draft, waiting till pick 4 at 100 in the 3rd round for a pass rusher. Do you feel like Dupree and Landry that's enough that they can wait that long to go for a pass rusher?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think this is where your best available has to really be, you have to adhere to it if you're in that room. And look, who knows? Maybe there is a run on corners. There's a run, and they still feel good about the next tier. There's a run on receivers earlier than we think. And maybe an edge guy that they have flat out have rated higher than any of their corners or receivers is there. I know Jalen Phillips is blowing everybody away at his pro day. I mean, if an Azeez Ojulari, if there's someone that they love, they think fits perfectly, they have to have a third guy for sure. It's a third guy for depth, which they had no depth. They go with 3 guys every Sunday last year, which I couldn't believe. And also, who knows with Landry? You have to think about it's just like an inside linebacker. That may have been a mistake to take no inside linebacker, because what do you think about Evans and his long-term future? What do you think about Landry and his long-term future and a second contract? So you have to get the next guy in this draft. And you know what? If it's someone that you absolutely love and he's higher on your big board, then take him. And that's fine. The way it broke here, I went there first, and then, the tight end versus edge in the 3rd round, tight end first is debatable. I don't think Brevin Jordan is available at 100.
Right.
And so that's another one of those. What do you feel about him? Where is he on your big board? But certainly, I mean, if they get an edge guy with their 1st round pick, I'm not mad about it, and I get it. But I think that's why they would do it.
How worried were you, Joe, last night that Oregon State, led by what must have been the most inspiring halftime speech from Wayne Tinkle, how worried were you that Oregon State was going to come back and beat Houston, if they could just get a rebound, that they were going to come back and win that game, and that you were never going to hear the end of it from me with Wayne Tinkle?
Well, I mean, you already have put him in the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame. I mean, he's already clearly better
Hey, this
than Rick
coaching
Barnes.
job he did was certainly something.
Well, I mean, so I want to know where your all-time Wayne Tinkle rankings are. Like, is he ahead of Roy Williams now? Is he ahead of Coach K? Where does he rank? I mean, he's got to be top 5 overall, right?
So I would say this, and I don't know if I let you know this, but before I had my take that Wayne Tinkle was a better coach than Rick Barnes, I didn't know a ton about Wayne Tinkle. I knew enough, but I didn't know the word. I would say this. If you were to match him up against any SEC coach, and I'm just saying pound for pound basketball coaching, if you were to match him up I think he is a better coach than every coach except for Nate Oates, Eric Musselman, and maybe Kermit Davis. I think he's better than every other SEC coach. Just pound for pound coaching.
Okay, so the two coaches who had probably the two best teams who got the Divas, they are automatically at the top of the list based on 1 year of success.
No. Like Will Wade at LSU, he's a good coach. I mean, he's a cheater, but he's a good coach. But I just think that Wayne Tinkle's a better coach than Will Wade. And
so
I think that he's probably a better – well, like I don't think Calipari's a great coach. I think Calipari gets better players. But if they had even players, I think Wayne Tinkle could outcoach Calipari.
So did you go and start watching like Wayne Tinkle basketball instructional videos to get a real feel for his coaching? Like what kind of work did you do to investigate the greatness of Wayne Tinkle's coaching in the last couple of weeks to back up your opinion?
I know his daughter. I mean, I guess that would probably be like the when I was like, hey, Wayne Tinkle's daughter Jocelyn played at Stanford, and very smart basketball player, knows the game. I mean, you can tell she's a coach's kid. And when I saw that and I saw how Oregon State had been playing and I knew how bad that program is and I know how bad they've been, I'm like, he is a heck of a coach. And you know that I don't think much about Rick Barnes. You basketball people, you guys that want to talk to me about basketball in December when I'm like, no, Joe, I have a Philadelphia Eagle game I'd rather watch than some basketball game. You basketball people just love talking about how great of a coach Rick Barnes is, then the guy never wins. And that's what drives me insane. That's what led me to this. Just you telling Tennessee fans that they have a great coach and that they don't have a great coach. And that's what drives me off the rails every time.
I mean, Jared, when they lost to Oregon State, my column was not telling them that they have a great coach. It was laying out the failures of Rick Barnes in March, which are very troubling. It's just that you have to keep it in perspective of the program. But I will give you this on Wayne Tinkle. I have watched more Oregon State basketball in the last 2 weeks than in my entire life combined. Yep. So that alone, he deserves at least like honorable mention Naismith or something for that.
Joe, I would have never shut up if they had come back and won last night. I'm just saying. I mean, I was ready. I was screaming. I was yelling. Well, actually, I turned it off because I thought it was a blowout. I put on the women's game. Then when the women's game was over, I turned it back, and I was watching I was like, oh, my God, I'm giving it to Joe tomorrow. I might just call in to Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow and just start yelling. That was how into it I was. Joe Rexroad, his 7-round mock draft is up now at The Athletic. I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. Bad take, Joe. As always, Joe, thank you. We'll talk soon.
All right. Louisville-Stanford might be the best game tonight. Good luck to your squad.
I'm nervous. 615-737-1025. Speaking of that women's game tonight, I will be watching. And I got some takes. Last night's women's game. I want to know who watched the women's game last night. I really do, because I saw a bunch of people that were tweeting and talking about the women's game. It led off First Take today. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
6 seconds left. Carrington on the drive. Carrington forces it up. No! Rebound UConn! And with 4/10 of a second left, Williams is fouled. Bickle down the floor, caught by Beckers, and the streak lives. A 13th straight trip to the Final Four for the UConn Huskies.
Yo, that women's game last night was lit. And I was stunned. I was on Twitter watching the game. I flipped over at halftime of the Oregon State game because I thought that was going to be a blowout. And I was stunned at all the people on Twitter that were watching the women's game at the same time as the men's game. When I worked in women's basketball, they had Sweet 16, Elite 8 for men's basketball Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Women went Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday because they didn't want to be on at the same time the men were on. And last night, there were a ton of people watching the women's game instead of the men's game. I thought it was great. I'm watching the women's game tonight. Louisville, hopefully we win. Knock on wood, I'm hopeful. But, last night, and I can't stand Baylor, and I can't stand their coach, and I can't stand their dirty program. But they got, as you heard Ryan Rucco on the ESPN call there say, 13 straight Final Fours for UConn. And you're watching Gino go shake hands. I'm thinking, Gino, you didn't earn this one. You did not earn this one. That was such a bad call. And that is a sport. And I know we're used to bad calls in football. We're used to bad calls in men's basketball. We're used to bad umpires in baseball. But there is no sport. As somebody who worked in it and very intimately got to know these officials, there is nobody who has a bigger problem with bad officiating than women's basketball. What happened last night in the Baylor-UConn game is the exact same thing that happened to the official that was afraid to throw the flag in the Rams and the Saints game. And after all we've been through with replay rules and with officials in hockey and the story last week around the Predators, it'd be nice if one of the qualifications for being a high-level official is, are you afraid to throw the flag? Are you afraid to blow the whistle? Are you afraid to make the call in the biggest moments? Because it used to just be, hey, we'll just let them play. Well, there's an issue here. Hey, just let them play. They slapped the girl in the face. Stephen A. Smith today, they started First Take about that terrible call last night.
Hell yeah, they got robbed. They got robbed. I think it's appropriate to say that. Now, listen. I'm really having fun with this because to me, it's a rarity when you get to question anything about UConn women's basketball. Their 13th straight Final Four. They got 11, 12, they're going for a 12th national title. They're phenomenal. In all seriousness, we understand. Gino Auriemma is absolutely right. I couldn't think of a greater comeback than he did at LeBron James with what he just said, because that's absolutely true, and it's no big deal. But LeBron James was right. Fran Fraschilla was right. I'm right. Anybody could see. People who can't see could see that was a damn foul, okay? Carrington got fouled. She got mugged. She got mugged on the way up. She got mugged once she elevated. You got elbowed in the face. It was a glaring, flagrant foul. Not literally a flagrant foul, but it was a foul without question. You've got to call that. It's a berth to the Final Four on the line. It was so clear. It was so evident. There's no way around it. It was a heist as far as I'm concerned, because UConn should not have been able to win this game like that. At the very least, overtime.
Max, let me get in
shouldn't
here.
have been like that. It's a heist, Molly.
It was a heist. And let me just say, women's basketball has had a problem with officiating for years and years and years. And just now it feels like women's basketball, when you look at the television ratings, is starting to get the attention it deserves. It's finally time for women's basketball to look at all the same officials they've run out there every year to make bad calls, and they got to make a change. And last night they had 3 officials that were afraid to blow the whistle. Where was Barb Jacobs? Where were these people that sit there and rate these officials and promote these officials and place these officials and pay these officials handsomely? And they end up with 3 doing a Baylor-Connecticut heavyweight fight. And they're afraid to blow the whistle. That was terrible. It was a great game for women's sports. It was a great game for sports. That was a great freaking game last night. Connecticut-Baylor. Great game. And at the end, the official was afraid to blow the whistle. Oh, my God. It's like everything is a sport. You know, women's basketball obviously has a big place in my heart. I know it has a big place in a lot of people's hearts. But everything that women's basketball has fought for. And to have this heavyweight fight where so many people are saying, I'm watching the women's game tonight. And then to just have it go all right down the toilet because they can't make a call in the end. Awful. Awful, awful. I'm watching tonight, Louisville women against Stanford, 2 versus 1. Joe Rexroad just talked about it. I heard them talking about it. I heard them talking today. I am hopeful we will win, but I am okay with Stanford. They've got a nice program. They're not like Baylor, who's got this terrible program. They've got a nice program at Stanford. I'll be okay. But Ian, I think a lot of people are going to watch a women's game tonight.
I agree.
Especially with no men's. Well, I guess we got the men's on. I guess the men just aren't important. I mean, to me, the 1 seeds are winning tonight. Gonzaga's going to win. Michigan's going to win. Whatever. I'm excited for the women's game tonight.
It should be a great game. I mean, to be honest, a lot of these women's games have been really good. The Belmont game was good. I remember watching that. I've been impressed with the tournament play by the women, to be honest with you.
The Belmont women play some ball now. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, one wild take from an NFL executive. I mean wild. And something we need to check ourselves about this NFL draft. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, we are streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Periscope, and of course, we are streaming as always on the Game Nashville app. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar, moving Trevor Maddich in under 30 minutes. His thoughts. Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest big board is out, plus San Francisco trading a haul to move up to number 3. It looks like quarterback's going to go number 1, quarterback's going to go number 2, quarterback's going to go number 3, maybe quarterback goes number 4. So it's going to be wild and crazy. We are officially in draft season. Free agency is over. I saw the Titans added a special teamer today. We're not even going to talk about it because I don't know anything about that guy, and he plays special teams, and unless it's a kicker, I'm not sure anybody around here cares. Draft season, we got pro days, we got mock drafts, we got Mel Kiper, we got Todd McShay. I mean, we got a lot to get to. And now is where we're starting to get into silly season. And silly season is when you start to hear things that are crazy that are written, see things that are crazy that are being discussed, wild comparisons, and that's exactly what happened this morning on Robbie and Rexroad. Charles Robinson, NFL insider for Yahoo Sports, who apparently was Joe's roommate in college. Charles Robinson was on the show, and he was asked about Trevor Lawrence because Urban Meyer said yesterday, that's kind of the direction we're leaning about what they're going to do. We know they're going to draft Lawrence. Urban's only there because he can draft Lawrence. Urban told him when to schedule his shoulder surgery or his rib surgery or whatever kind of surgery he had, his arm surgery. Urban told him when to schedule it so it would fit Urban's timeline. Just like last year when we knew Cincinnati was going to take Joe Burrow, we know they're taking Trevor Lawrence. And then led to this nugget from Charles Robinson, very well connected in the NFL. This is what he said this morning.
You know, Trevor Lawrence, all I can say is every single evaluation on him from whoever you talk to, you know, it's not through the roof, it's pretty close. So everybody believes in Trevor Lawrence being, you know, everything he's cracked up to be, you know, and I've heard somebody just talking to some guy, he said, look, man, the floor is, he has a career like Andrew Luck, where you know, he's a really good player, but maybe gets hit a lot or whatever.
The floor?
You know, the floor, yeah. Like people really believe that he's, you know, he's got everything. He's got the leadership qualities. He's got the arm. He's got, you know, length. He's athletic, like all these different things. And so, you know, I yield to teams on this one. I mean, I don't know that there's a guy I've heard this much positive stuff about consistently for years. And I don't know who I really honest, other than Luck, I don't know who I would compare it to. Obviously Luck, you know, for years and years, Luck was going to be the guy when he came out of Stanford.
So that's the talk right there, right? Is that his floor is Andrew Luck. Whoa. I like Trevor Lawrence. I would draft Trevor Lawrence with the number 1 overall draft pick. As a Titans fan, I don't love the fact that just like Indianapolis got 2 of these guys, now it appears that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to get the 3rd. I like it much, much more when the Houston Texans have the number 1 pick and they draft David Carr. I understand that's not going to happen. But the floor is Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, who took the worst team in the league and took them to the playoffs as a rookie. Andrew Luck, who was a big boy table quarterback his entire career, including his rookie year. You do realize Andrew Luck in 2014 carried an Indianapolis team past Peyton Manning and into the AFC title game where they lost to New England. The Titans made it to the AFC title game last year, and everybody was talking about it like it was the greatest thing ever. The floor is Andrew Luck. To me, that's a little silly. In fact, I would say this. Every year that there's a quarterback that goes number 1, they're not all created equal. A couple of years ago, when the quarterback who went number 1 was Baker Mayfield, there was a debate. Do you like Baker? Do you like Darnold? Do you like Josh Rosen? Do you like Josh Allen? And then do you like Lamar Jackson, who ended up going with the last pick in the first round? When Mitchell Trubisky went number 2 to the Bears, it was kind of like, yeah, we need a quarterback. He's the top quarterback. We're going to take him. Now, it ended up being one of the stupidest picks in the history of the NFL. But nobody had been talking for years and years about Mitchell Trubisky. This is different with Trevor Lawrence. Andrew Luck was the same way. Peyton Manning was the same way. But it also doesn't mean that other quarterbacks aren't hyped just as much. Jamarcus Russell was hyped when he came out as, this guy is going to be the guy for years. Jamarcus Russell was a total bust. When Matt Leinart chose to go back to USC, he would have been the number 1 pick in the draft. He was the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. They had won the national title. Vince Young was not eligible. Matt Leinart would have been the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, and he decided to go back to USC. I know it didn't work out with the Cardinals. My gut tells me it's not working out with Matt Leinart, no matter who the coach is. That wouldn't have worked. Even last year. Now, Joe Burrow went number 1 overall, and Joe Burrow earned it. But Joe wasn't the guy who had been talked about for years and years. The guy who had been talked about was Tua. Remember, Tua showed up, 5-star kid, top recruit in the country, and everybody said, now, hey, they're going to go with Hurts. But this kid, the freshman from Hawaii, hey, he's a bad boy. Everybody said that. Then, after seeing Tua play in some mop-up roles, when Nick Saban didn't have a choice in the national title game, and he went to Tua, everybody said, he's the next one. He's the king. Give him the crown. He's the man. Long bomb, touchdown, national championship. Tua is the guy. Then what happened? Remember, Miami tanked. And I think it's pretty obvious, knowing what they've done since then, it's pretty obvious that's exactly what happened. Hey, we're going to tear down this team. We're going to suck. We're going to draft him with our first overall pick, and he's the guy. Then he got hurt. Then Miami was better than they expected. With the 5th overall pick, they took him. And now there's a legitimate question. Do they even like Tua? Trevor Lawrence is getting all the hype and all the buzz. Now, the buzz that goes with Zach Wilson or with Trey Lance or with Mac Jones, or it's well, he's not Trevor Lawrence, but. And I think Lawrence is going to be a fine pro. But I'm also not going to sit here, just like I didn't sit there last year and tell you Tua is going to be awesome, or Burrow is going to be the next Andrew Luck, or Herbert is a bum, or I didn't tell you that last year because I didn't know. I don't know enough about Zach Wilson. I don't know enough about Justin Fields, Trey Lance. I don't even know enough about Trevor Lawrence. A lot of quarterbacks have been drafted by Jacksonville. A lot of quarterbacks have kind of stunk. So I think Lawrence will be okay. But the floor as Andrew Luck is pretty silly. And let's not just sit back and look at evaluations of quarterbacks and act like because it was said in March of their draft year that it is the gospel. Remember the quarterback guru on TV, Dan Orlovsky, when he was on TV last year and he was discussing the difference between Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa, and remember what he said about just how great Tua, the next great thing, just remember what he said. Take a listen.
It's enormous, the difference between the two players. Everything that is paramount playing quarterback really well in the NFL, Tua has. Anticipation, throwing people open, how to use your eyes, pinpoint accuracy, suddenness and instincts in the pocket. Tua does really, really, really well. It's really the foundation of him as a player. And all those things that I just mentioned, those are the weakness in Justin Herbert's game. He doesn't anticipate as a thrower. He's got average accuracy. He's got poor instincts in the pocket. He doesn't use his eyes. They're actually a weakness of his. So the difference of the players is enormous when it comes to just their talent.
The quarterback guru said that last year. Guess what? Justin Herbert as a rookie, and that doesn't mean he's a franchise quarterback, but he looked like a rookie. Tua, there are questions now whether or not he's a starter in the NFL. And again, give these guys time. But I just cannot get on this Trevor Lawrence hype train of the floor is Andrew Luck. Calm down. Do I think Jacksonville's found their quarterback? Yeah, I do. Do I feel better about it than when they drafted Blake Bortles 3rd overall? Better for them? Yeah, I do. But this idea, the hype train for Trevor Lawrence and even for Zach Wilson and all these guys, to me, it's crazy. And I just say slow down. Slow it down for everybody. Remember, the Rams traded all those picks to the Titans for Jared Goff, and then they traded all those picks to get rid of him. The Eagles traded all those picks to the Browns to get Carson Wentz. The Dallas Cowboys sat on their rear ends, and got Dak Prescott in the 4th round. Just calm down. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back to your text. If you got calls in the draft, get it in, 615-737-1025. Again, Mel Kiper's big board is out, and it is it is wild when you see the mock drafts and all the talk about what everybody says is going to happen, and then you compare it with what you think or what you know. It is wild. And I've got a draft take that I want to get to. We'll do that coming up next. 615-737-1025, Stillman & Company. We are live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com, right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Time to save cash fast with Nashville's best deals. Go to thegamenashville.com right now to get half off a $20 gift card from Grain & Berry in Hillsborough Village. Grain & Berry is Nashville's superfood cafe where healthy meets delicious. Stillman & Company, it's ESPN 1025 The Game. We're streaming on the Game Nashville app.
Yeah, it is the San Francisco 49ers going from number 12 all the way to number 3, presumably to take a quarterback, their quarterback of the future. I'll let you guys decide which quarterback that is going to be, but I think it's pretty clear we know who's going number 1. I think we have a pretty decent idea who's going number 2. Remains to be seen who ends up at number 3, but of course, if you're the San Francisco 49ers, you're not making any sort of move like this unless you are going to get a quarterback. The rest of the deal, it is this. The Miami Dolphins, they get number 12. They also get a third-round pick this year, and then they get future number 1s next year and the following year. And, of course, then the question might be, what happens to the 49ers quarterback of the current? That would be Jimmy Garoppolo. To that, I would say everything they have said publicly means they have committed to him. We will see, now that they have the number 3 pick, if that, in fact, holds.
Everything they've said publicly says the 49ers are committed to Jimmy Garoppolo. You buy what they say publicly? I mean, yesterday it was like Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Oh, we love Jimmy. We love Jimmy. The only reason we did this is because we just, we think we should have 2 good quarterbacks. And that's not how the NFL works. Benjamin Albright, NFL Insider, was on our show yesterday, said that, and I have heard this from more than just him, that 49ers staff blames Jimmy for losing the Super Bowl. They look at it and they say, okay, he wasn't good enough. We were afraid to throw the ball with him, and he missed the throw to Emmanuel Sanders that would have won the game. They don't love Jimmy over there. Just like McVay doesn't love Jared Goff anymore. Just like Peterson got sick of Carson Wentz. I mean, it feels like it's very similar. So here are the 49ers at 3. The way I am reading the tea leaves, right, is we know Jacksonville likes Trevor Lawrence. They're going with him at number 1. And nobody can get to number 1. Zach Wilson and the Jets are at 2. And it sounds like everybody loves Zach Wilson. Now, I had never heard of Zach Wilson until the draft process started. Last year, it felt like it was Lawrence and it was Fields. Now we're hearing all about Zach Wilson. I did hear Charles Robinson said, the Yahoo Sports Insider said on the morning show today, he did say that he talked to evaluators, and when he was asking about Lawrence and Fields, they said, hey, the kid out of BYU is pretty good. So I'm not going to knock that. But are the Jets really all that in on Zach Wilson? Like, again, I think we can go to any year, and you can say, hey, that second overall pick is nothing better than Rick Meyer. That's what the second, Marcus Mariota, Carson Wentz, you name it, the second pick, and Robert Griffin the third. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't scouted Zach Wilson. But the Jets have an entire team full of problems. They're sitting there with the second overall pick. They wanted Trevor Lawrence. They beat the Rams and didn't stink bad enough in order to get him. So do you take the quarterback? Is Darnold really that bad? And I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't watched Darnold enough. I just know his team is awful. And if San Francisco is going to pay 3 first-rounders in order to get up to number 3, if they really like Zach Wilson, would they take another first-rounder, say that they get for Jimmy Garoppolo, or trade another player off of their roster? Robert Saleh, the new coach of the Jets, he knows that roster very well. Would that not be the right call? Like, hey, we've got Sam Darnold as our quarterback. We know he can play in the NFL. How good is he? We don't know. But we know he can play in the NFL. Let's get him a bunch of help. Because it feels like if the Jets use this second overall pick on another quarterback, it's going to be just like Darnold. You use all the resources on this guy to get him. You buy him a wide receiver or 2, but it's nothing. I mean, it's Corey Davis. And you expect him to go win, and he won't win because you're the Jets, and you don't have all the resources in order to go build a team around him. And the next thing you know, the coach is fired, the GM is fired, and they're looking for another quarterback. And if they were always going to go with Zach Wilson with the number 2 pick, and I don't know what sold him, maybe it was the pro day last week, but if they were always going to go with Zach Wilson, shouldn't they have been more in on shopping Sam Darnold? Now, a lot of people would say, hey, they were looking at Deshaun Watson with that number 2 pick. And maybe that's what the impetus for Miami to trade out of 3 was they got to a point to where they knew, hey, we can't pick Deshaun Watson. But I'm trying to figure out what the Jets' plan is here because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. 615-737-1025. Again, Mel Kiper Jr., and I'm not saying that Mel is the end-all, be-all of the NFL draft. Who was it? Bill Tobin of the Colts, who went on ESPN after Mel just ripped him for taking a player. And he was like, who the hell is Mel Kiper? So keep that with a grain of salt. He's got Zach Wilson ranked as the 7th best player in the draft. Here are the Jets with the 2nd overall pick, and they may take the 7th best player. Andrew texts into the text line, which, of course, is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Andrew says, I'm not scared of the Jags and Lawrence at all. He isn't playing its ACC trash rosters anymore. He'll just be another Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, or Matt Ryan. Okay, but nothing exceptional. Let me ask you this question. When Matthew Stafford played in the SEC and LSU won a national title and Florida won a couple of national titles and Alabama won a national title, was he playing against trash rosters when he went number 1 overall? No. When Trevor Lawrence went out there, when Trevor Lawrence took on Alabama in the national championship game in San Francisco and absolutely embarrassed Nick Saban and the Tide, were they playing against trash rosters? No. I understand the ACC kind of stinks. And I would be worried if I was Jacksonville and I was trying to say, okay, do I love this pick here at number 1? One thing that would worry me is the level of competition in the ACC. But at the same time, I'm not just going to bag on it. I'm not going to sit back and say, hey, he didn't play anybody good, so because he didn't play anybody good, he's no good. The Pac-12 hasn't made the playoff, I believe, since Washington in 2016. And yet Justin Herbert walked right off of campus, right into the NFL after a pandemic offseason and looked like a player. Texter says, could the Titans swap the 22nd and 85th pick for the Jags' 25th and 45th? I would have to have that Jimmy Johnson chart in front of me. I'm guessing probably not. That seems like you're asking for a little bit too much to move back 3 spots and then move up 40. I'm not sure that equates, but you'd have to look at the Jimmy Johnson chart. And then the other thing is, Urban's a total wild card. Nobody knows what this guy's going to do. Sometimes I don't even know if he knows what he's going to do. Trevor Maddich with the latest, his thoughts on the entire draft process. Here we are now. Pro days are out of the way. Big boards are being set. Mock drafts are being had. What does Trevor Maddich think? What does he think about the Titans and all these corners that looks like maybe one will shake available with a 22nd pick? Trevor Maddich, ESPN college football analyst, will join us next. Stillman and Company right here. We're delivered by TriStar Moving. Of course, we're streaming now on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Periscope. Go check out the whole show. By the way, let's go ahead and do it now. Now is your chance to enter into the T-Mobile Hockey Homegate. That's right. So, ESPN 102.5 The Game and T-Mobile have teamed up to help you continue with the tradition of a hockey home gating party. It's time now to text into the game text line at 615-737-1025 for your chance to win the T-Mobile Hockey Home Gate. Watch a weekend Preds game with the Dos Equis prize pack, which includes a case of beer, dessert from Nothing Bundt Cakes, a T-Mobile prize pack, and food provided by 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. Just text the word ICE, I-C-E, to 615-737-1025 now to enter. The winner will be contacted on Thursday. You must be 21 or older to enter. Trevor Maddich next. Stillman and Company right here. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Mel Kiper Jr. has a brand new big board out. Trevor Lawrence, number 1, no change. Zach Pitts. Did I say Zach Pitts? Kyle Pitts. Zach Pitts. Kyle Pitts. Zach Pitts is a pitcher from a while back. Kyle Pitts, number 2, the tight end from Florida. Devontae Smith. Here, the 3 SEC receivers. Devontae Smith, Alabama. Jamar Chase, LSU. Jalen Waddle, Alabama. Justin Fields, 6. Zach Wilson, the quarterback, BYU. Most people have pegged at number 2 the Jets at 7. Penei Sewell, the tackle from Oregon, at 8. Rashawn Slater, a guard from Northwestern, is at 9. And Elijah Vela Tucker, a tackle from USC, is 10. No defensive players in Mel's top 10. Then they come, pretty much all the second 10 for Mel are on defense. 4 corners in the top 21. Caleb Farley at 15, Virginia Tech. Patrick Surtain the second, 17, Alabama. J.C. Horn, South Carolina, 18. And Greg Newsome, Northwestern, 21. All could be Titan targets. Trevor Maddich joins us, ESPN college football analyst, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Okay, Trev, so we got a lot of draft drama, normally kind of around the number 2 pick. Zach Wilson, your squad, BYU. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, if all the offensive players go off the board early, like Mel has on his big board and in his mock draft, that's got to be great for the Titans. What do you think when you see Mel's big board?
Yeah, no, I love that, because when you've got that many quarterbacks going ahead of where the Titans pick and that many receivers going ahead of where the Titans pick, it'll push down other position players that they'll be able to get where they're drafting in the 20s, if they stay there, that have a higher talent rating than where they will fall in the draft. And so the more little guys get picked up there, the more chance that they'll get some big guys or some pass rushers fall to them.
What do you think of those corners? Farley, Surtain, Horn, and Newsome. I don't feel like there's any chance Surtain or Horn is available. Farley, it feels like he's kind of a medical red flag, and because he opted out last year, I mean, it's a little iffy. And then Greg Newsome at 21. I know in my heart, Trev, that if a corner is the 21st best player on the board, he won't be available at 22.
I agree with you, just because of the nature of the league. I mean, we all know it's a quarterback league, right? So you need an elite quarterback, you need pass rushers that can affect the other quarterback, and you need cover guys that can affect the other quarterback, right? Those are the 3 most important things, in addition to protecting the guy. So I agree with you with what you're saying, but I think some of the red flags are reasons why some of these guys might fall to the Titans. And you talked about Farley. I mean, Farley opted out last year, didn't play, so he doesn't have a whole lot of tape. He played quarterback in high school, primarily a quarterback, and the first time he'd ever played corner was his first game for Virginia Tech against Florida State, and he had 2 picks in that game, right? And so he has a ton of upside. But the medical things you're talking about and the fact that he's got so little experience might make teams want to go with guys that they figure are more reliably going to start right from the beginning than a guy that they do have some question marks about. But I don't. I think he's going to be a really good player in the league. It'll take him a little bit of time to kind of get up to speed, but he's really good at press coverage. So you can put him over a guy and say, look, follow that guy wherever he goes, and then teach him the nuances as time goes on. Newsome from Northwestern is another guy that could fall to that point because he's got injury issues. And so if the medical staff of the Titans feel like they can rely on his availability physically, the guy's fantastic. I mean, he started for 3 years at Northwestern, but he was in and out at times because of those injuries. He played banged up. But even so, last year, he led all of college football in the FBS in passer rating allowed. Passers that went after him, remember that in passer rating, 100 is perfect, 50 is average. He allowed 16, a rating of 16, and only allowed 10 completions, and only one of those was more than 10 yards downfield. So when he's healthy, he is phenomenal. But because of some of those questions, he might be a guy that could fall a little bit farther than he should, push down even farther because of a flurry of quarterbacks and receivers that might go ahead of him.
Trevor Maddich is our guest on Mel's latest big board. Kwity Paye from Michigan is at 16. He's the only pass rusher that Mel has in the top 21. So that's before the Titans pick. He then has Jalen Phillips from Miami at 22. So all the names that we've been talking about, whether it's Azeez Ojulari at Georgia or whether it's Gregory Rousseau or whomever it may be, Mel has dropped them down on his board. It makes me think, Trevor, if the Titans are sitting there at 22, they can get the edge rusher they want as long as it's not Kwity Paye or maybe, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame. But it also makes me think that perhaps trading back, they can still get the edge rusher that they really want. What do you think about that?
Yeah, they probably could. Most of the edge rushers here come with some question marks. What they're not perfect. They're guys that would have a reason to fall a little bit, and so that might mean that they'll take an edge rusher at 22. Although because of how they addressed the pass rush and the defensive line in free agency with Dupree and Autry, I don't know that they need to stretch at that point. But you mentioned a little bit later. What can they do a little bit later? And there's some guys that I think they can wait on that have a good chance to be about as productive in general as pass rushers outside of the first round. One of them is Ronnie Perkins out of Oklahoma. He was suspended for chronic knuckleheadism for the first half of last season, but he came back and was phenomenal. I mean, he played 6 games last year. First one, he knocked some rust off, and then he had 31 pressures the final 5 games. He averaged 6 pressures a game in his final 5 games, and he was just as good against the run as he was as a pass rusher, and that's important too because it means that he's not just a specialist that has to come off the field in a run situation. He can stay on the field. So Ronnie Perkins is a guy that might fall. But again, you look at another guy that I think people really don't know much about, but the Titans will. And that's a pass rusher named Peyton Turner out of Houston. In a lot of ways, he's similar to Ronnie Perkins out of Oklahoma because he didn't play a lot last year because Houston had epic problems with COVID. So he just doesn't have a lot of tape. And this past year, 2020, was Turner's best season far and away. But he was terrific against the run and as a pass rusher. He's really tall. He's 6'5", but he's got super long arms. And when you look at his potential, he's got the potential to do a lot of great things and develop. And these are 2 guys that the Titans could wait on outside of the first round and still have a guy that would have a chance to be about as productive overall as somebody that they might take at 22.
Trevor Matich is our guest. Couple of takes I have from Mel's big board. Number one, everybody is buzzing about Zach Wilson to the Jets at 2. Mel's got him at 7 behind Fields. And everyone's talking about Mac Jones at 3 to San Francisco, and Mel's got him at 12. I mean, can you really take the 12th best player in the draft with the 3rd overall pick?
You can if you think that Mel is wrong. Mm-hmm. A lot of it has to do with scheme, and a lot of it has to do with fit. And that's where quarterbacks are really different than any other player in a lot of ways from a standpoint of whether or not that scheme or that fit will be something that they're willing to take a chance on. When you're picking at number 3, what you're looking for is a generational talent. You're looking for somebody that is an absolute difference maker. And there are a lot of people that don't think that Mac Jones is a difference maker. I think in the right scheme he can be. And so if the 49ers want to take him, then I think it would work. But the interesting thing to me is that at number 3, it's very likely that Justin Fields will be available too. And Justin Fields just ran a 4.44 40. He is powerful in his lower body like a running back. He breaks tackles. He has sudden burst, side-to-side lateral movement like a running back. It's amazing. And he's got inherent accuracy at all 3 levels, short, medium, and deep, with his arm. The only question for him is that how did he do in the interview process in terms of understanding not just what to do, but why to do it that way. In other words, understanding defensive concepts, understanding how offensive concepts adjust to those concepts, and things like that. I've got no reason to think he can't, but those are the things that teams like the 49ers will need to decide. Now, remember this about the 49ers. Their head coach, Kyle Shanahan, was offensive coordinator in Washington when RG3, Robert Griffin III, was drafted out of Baylor. And his rookie year, he was offensive Rookie of the Year. He was unstoppable his rookie year, and Shanahan maximized his strengths. Now, after that, RG3 faded away for a couple of reasons. One was that he got hurt late in that season, and that kind of changed the way that he thought about running. And the other is that he lost his focus, and he became too focused on his brand and not focused enough on his craft. And so those things kind of caused him to fade away a bit. But the point is that Shanahan knows how to take a guy who is a real threat as a runner and build an offense around him that can get that quarterback to MVP status. And I think that Justin Fields has more capability than RG3 because RG3 was really fast. He was an Olympic hurdler, Olympic caliber hurdler. He just barely didn't make the Olympic game. But he wasn't shifty. So if you could catch RG3, you could hit him hard. And people did. Whereas Justin Fields is more shifty and has more power to deal with people when they do hit it. And so I think you add that together, and there's no reason that a Kyle Shanahan wouldn't think that he could take a Justin Fields and do everything he did with RG3 and more, as long as he's convinced that Justin Fields is able to do all the processing that some quarterbacks struggle with when they get up to the NFL level.
Trevor Matich, our guest. We'll go through all four of these quarterbacks because I think it is fascinating what may play down on draft night. We'll go through that. Plus, best case scenario, looking at Mel's big board, what's the best case scenario for the Titans at 22? We'll get to that with Trevor Matich, ESPN college football analyst, joining us on the program. Stillman and Company. We are delivered by TriStar Moving. Trevor, by the way, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. We're streaming on the Game Nashville app. Trevor Matich, ESPN college football analyst, with us 1 month from yesterday will be the first round. 1 month from today will be the second and third rounds of the NFL draft. Can you believe that it is almost here? Trevor Matich is with us. So, Trev, let's say this. 1 month from yesterday, you're John Robinson, I'm Mike Vrabel, okay? And we've got our list in front of us. We've got our big board, and I'm looking at Mel's right now with a corner at 15, Caleb Farley, Patrick Surtain 17, J.C. Horn 18, Greg Newsome 21. I know I need a receiver. I know I need a tight end. I know I need corners, pass rushers. What is the best thing that could happen to me and you 1 month from today, Trevor?
I think based on what the needs are, it would be for one of those four corners that we talked about, cornerbacks, to fall down to the Titans at 22, because they've already improved the pass rush and the defensive line. By doing so, they brought in a couple of free agents that are good, not just at rushing the passer, but creating third and long, because they're both very good at getting behind the line and creating zero or negative rushing plays. So that's good. Now, if you can add more depth in terms of cover corner and more talent in terms of cover corner, all of a sudden those play off of one another. So I would absolutely love to see that happen. But another thing that I think would be an underrated thing, because he's rated by Mel to go about here, is if Notre Dame linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is available at 22. If I'm the Titans, I take him and don't look back for the same kind of reason, because he's a guy that can complement what those big free agents they brought in on the defensive line and big linebacker Bud Dupree can do. Owusu-Koramoah is a ball hawk. He doesn't just fly to the football. When he gets there, he knocks it out. He's like a linebacker version of Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu of the Cardinals, a guy that just has a knack for being around the ball and stripping it out of there. He's got the range to be able to cover running backs for sure, and then tight ends, as long as, he gets a little bit of help over the top, because he's not the tallest of guys. But he's got the range to stay right there with them. And he's the kind of guy that you can line up at a lot of different places and attack the line of scrimmage, attack the quarterback, if you've got a defensive mind trust in the coaching staff that understands how to use versatile players. And certainly Mike Vrabel and his coaches know how to do that. And so, I think an ideal situation would be one of those talented corners fall all the way to 22. But I'll tell you what, I think it would be a home run if Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah were available and they snagged it.
Trevor, it seems like the consensus is Trevor Lawrence 1, Zach Wilson 2 out of BYU. I guess right now Mac Jones at 3. Then we also have Justin Fields, and you talked about Fields' ability to run, and Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. How would you rank those guys personally? And are you buying the hype on – we're hearing all kinds of hype about Zach Wilson, all kinds of hype about Trey Lance. Are you buying the hype on these guys, and how would you rank them?
Yeah, I would rank them right now. It's really tough. But I would rank them Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trey Lance. Now, Jones could be anywhere up to number 2. Those top 4, I think, are so close you're splitting hairs. And if you told me you see it differently, I would say I can't say you're totally wrong. And Trey Lance, he may end up being the best of them. It's just that I don't know about him since he played at North Dakota State. He only played one game last year. He had a phenomenal 2019. But how much of that was just arm strength that was able to drive the ball into spaces where FCS-level corners couldn't close to, right? And on his pro day, certainly, he made a bunch of throws that, even though they were against air, would have been knocked away by NFL corners just because of where the ball was placed. So I've got to see more of that from Lance. But that's where I see that. Zach Wilson, people say that he's no good because he can't because he's not a great runner, and he's not a great runner, but he ran like a 4.84 or something like that, 40, and that's fast enough. And he's really good in the pocket. And everybody says all the time that in the NFL, you've got to be good in the pocket. And if you're not, it doesn't matter how well you do out of the pocket. It's got to start inside the pocket. Well, there is no better pocket passer in this draft than Mac Jones. The problem is he was only outside of the pocket trying to throw the ball I think, about 20, 21 times, and he wasn't very effective during those times. So people say that he can't do anything when he's outside the pocket. I kind of doubt that. So I think Mac Jones is the big wild card because he could go as high as number 3 and throw the rest of the quarterback draft into disarray.
Wilson over Lawrence? I mean, I don't know enough about Wilson. Obviously, I mean, if there's anybody who I know knows college football and knows BYU football, it's you, Trevor. But again, Wilson over Lawrence? I mean, really? Why?
Yeah, Wilson over Lawrence. Well, see, that's a good question, right? It's because, in part, that Wilson is more accurate throwing the ball deep down the field. Now, in some ways, that's a little bit hard to grade because Wilson only had one big year, and that was just last year, and all of his Power 5 opponents were taken off the schedule because of COVID. But there were plenty of times that Wilson was throwing the ball deep down the field to somebody who was covered, and he dropped a dime. As a matter of fact, a lot of his best downfield throws were off balance, running to the side, throwing the ball while he's drifting to the side because pressure's coming, and he flicks it 50 yards down the field to the opposite side of the field and drops it into a bucket to a receiver who's being tightly covered by a guy running right on his tail. And so you see this happen a lot with him. It's like Mac Jones. People say that his offense was so good that we don't really know how good he is throwing to receivers that are covered when he's under pressure, but that's not true. Mac Jones, if you only grade the plays that he was under pressure, throwing to receivers who had tight coverage, he was one of the best in the country at that. And so if you take away the concept of not having the Power 5 opponents this year from Zach Wilson, and just look at the times that he was under pressure, throwing to guys that were covered down the field that required a dime, and you saw him hit those over and over and over again. The thing that I worry about with Trevor Lawrence is one thing, and that's his deep accuracy. This last year, his completion percentage of balls that went at least 20 yards in the air was 40%. It was about 40%, a little bit less than that, but split hairs, rounded up 40%. But he didn't have T. Higgins, who went off to the NFL the year before. He didn't have Justin Ross, who was injured all year. And those were his two big jump ball, deep guy receivers that went up and got the ball for him. And some of the other guys he threw too deep had some drops. Okay. So it wasn't all his fault this year. How was he last year when he had T. Higgins and Justin Ross? It was worse. It was 38% last year for Trevor Lawrence in completion percentage of balls that traveled at least 20 yards in the air. And when you break that down on tape, a good number of those were not particularly well thrown. They were just sort of thrown up there, sometimes on the wrong side of the defender. In other words, where you would see on tape the receiver for Clemson running down the field down the left side with a defender on his inside, and the ball would come down on the inside of the defender. And the receiver had to go through the defender and go up and get the ball. And you saw that happen a lot. On paper, that turns into a big completion for Lawrence. But I look at that and go, well, that really wasn't Lawrence. That was the receiver. Now, I'm not saying he's inaccurate. I don't want people to mistake what I'm saying here. I'm not saying he can't throw the ball, that he doesn't have arm talent. Of course he does. What I'm saying, though, is that under all kinds of circumstances, I am disappointed and a bit concerned by the limited completion percentage of balls that were thrown at least 20 yards in the air, even when last year he had a couple of big, tall receivers that could go up and fight for that ball.
Trevor Maddich is our guest. The two biggest beefs I have with Mel's big board, Trev, one, I think Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver, if not the best player in this draft. I mean, LSU had a superstar team 2 years ago. I thought he was the best player on it. And two would be Penei Sewell drops all the way down to 8th, the left tackle out of Oregon in Mel's big board. That doesn't seem to align with, one, what I think most people have said about Sewell, and two, what I think Cincinnati at 5 is hoping for, because I think they want 4 quarterbacks to go, and I think they're taking Sewell. What do you think about those two?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I don't think there's really any way that you can make a definitive statement against what you just said, Jared, because it is Sewell is, I think, one of the top 3 players in this draft in terms of just overall football player. I believe that. You know, I think, though, that people put a premium on guys who, with the ball in their hands, are elite playmakers. And we look at Pitts, Waddle, Jamar Chase, those guys, Devontae Smith, Those guys are elite playmakers with the ball in their hands. I tend to agree with you that I would put Jamar Chase over Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winning receiver out of Alabama last year. And the reason is just size. Jamar Chase is the same height as Smith, but he's got 30 pounds on him. In other words, Smith is 170 pounds. Jamar Chase is 6'1", 200. And even though Chase opted out last year, the year before with Burrow throwing to him, when you look at the national championship game against Clemson, he was going one-on-one for a lot of that game against the future first-round draft choice, A.J. Terrell, for Clemson, and he just owned it, even though Terrell was right with him all the time. And part of that was because he used his size. However, if I'm picking receiver in this draft, the first one I take is Jalen Waddle. He only played half the season for Alabama last year, sprained his ankle. But he's the fastest, maybe the fastest man in this draft. And I think he's got the most upside potential. So I would actually take Waddle first if it were me.
Wow. Trevor Maddich, ESPN college football analyst, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters. Trev, we will talk next week. Although I disagree with much of what you said, and I may just go on there and just rip all of it apart. But I still love you.
Rip it apart. I love you too, and I will love ripping apart your ripping apart of me.
Sounds good. Trevor Maddich, ESPN college football analyst, as always, joining us on the program. Woo! So Trevor goes with Zach Wilson over Trevor Lawrence. Hot take, Ian?
I would say so at this point, yeah.
I mean, we just had the Charles Robinson clip we played where he said on the morning show, he talked to somebody in the league who said that Trevor Lawrence's floor is Andrew Luck. Now I've got Trevor Maddich saying Zach Wilson over Trevor Lawrence. Those are some takes. So I think each team is thinking something different. So instead of a mock draft, instead of like, I think they need a quarterback here, I want to go through what each team in the top 10 is thinking right now about the draft. And we'll do that coming up next. FanDuel Sportsbook app. Big games tonight. Let me tell you about my official sportsbook app, the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is tournament time, and with so many games going on, who wants to bet just one? That's right. That's why I love betting parlays on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's a great way to combine bets from different games for an even bigger win. And guess what? FanDuel is here to help you if your parlay doesn't go as planned. They'll give you up to $25 back in site credit if your parlay of 3 or more legs falls one leg short. That's one parlay per day each day of the tournament for new and existing users. And not just that, we got great games tonight. We got the 1 seeds going tonight. We also got women's basketball tonight. So certainly some doable parlays, I would assume, with women's basketball. That's why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook app. They're always hooking you up. The app is so easy to use. It features many bet options to choose from, along with the exclusive always-on promotions. And when you win, you'll get paid in as little as 24 hours. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and sign up with the promo code JGM so they know that I sent you. That's FanDuel Sportsbook promo code JGM. Must be 21 or older. Present in Tennessee. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $25. Terms apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. For problem gambling support, call 1-800-889-9789. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. Hal Gill in 25 minutes. Boy, we got into it last week. I bet we will get into it this week, especially with the Predators going 4-0 since I told Hal, hey, I think it's time to sell this team. Preds go 4-0. I'm sure Hal will have some thoughts, especially for the portion of the audience out there that doesn't like me. But I am trying to sift through the hot air and the hot takes and everything that's going on. We are less than 1 month away from the NFL draft, which means we're starting to get into silly season, where people say stupid things, people tweet uneducated things, people get lied to by NFL teams, and you start saying some wild and crazy stuff. So after the trade this past weekend, where San Francisco moved up to 3, Miami moved up but then got back to 6. They moved down to 12, but they got back to 6. I started thinking, instead of these guys these teams are going to draft, I think it's more important to get to your conclusion as to who's going to be drafted based upon what each team is thinking today. So I figure without further ado, let's just get right to it. I will tell you what each team is thinking. I got a feeling on what they're thinking, so let's just start right off the top.
Number one,
Jacksonville. They're thinking Trevor Lawrence is our quarterback for the next 25 years. That's what they're thinking. Now, it might be 5 years and he might stink. It might be 10 years. He might be Carson Palmer with the Bengals where it's a nice little run. Matthew Stafford with Detroit. But they're looking at Trevor Lawrence. They think he's our future. That's why Urban Meyer's here, is because Urban knows he's getting Trevor Lawrence. That is the easiest one.
Number 2,
the Jets. Now, this is probably the trickiest. Remember, Trevor Maddich just came on our show and said he thinks Zach Wilson is better than Trevor Lawrence. Now, I'm not sure if I believe that, but I would say that there's probably somebody who does. And you're going to hear some more of that discussion as we get into draft season. If Robert Saleh and the Jets believe that Zach Wilson is better than Trevor Lawrence, they will draft Zach Wilson with the 2nd overall pick. But the big key to what they're thinking is, what do they think about Sam Darnold? They didn't try to jump at trading Sam Darnold this offseason. If you knew you were taking Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence, whichever one fell to you with the 2nd overall pick, wouldn't you have been shopping Sam Darnold? And I say this because Philadelphia got a 3rd-round pick this year and probably a 1st-round pick next year for Carson Wentz. Wouldn't you have wanted a similar return if you were going to get rid of Darnold and go with Zach Wilson? So I think they're looking to see who will offer them the most for the Zach Wilson pick. And if it is absurd and insane, they will take it, then they will go with Darnold. But I don't think they'll get what they want, a definite king's ransom. I think they'll take Zach Wilson because they will convince themselves that he is their future. And Sam Darnold, who never got a fair shake and had the same coach as Ryan Tannehill when everybody thought Ryan Tannehill couldn't play with the Jets. Tannehill had Gase with the Dolphins. I think Darnold deserves another chance, but I think they're going to go with Zach Wilson at number 2.
Number 3,
I think San Francisco is thinking, how can we get to number 2? I think that's why they're telling you that's how much they love Jimmy Garoppolo, because they're trying to trade him. Because they think if they can get one more 1st-round pick, they can get Zach Wilson. I just don't buy that they love Mac Jones that much. And isn't it the ultimate smokescreen if you're planning to take Justin Fields? Trevor Maddich brought it up perfectly. Hey, remember Kyle Shanahan when he had RG3? Is Mac Jones really Matt Ryan? I have a hard time with that. But I still think they're going to go Mac Jones. It just feels like they've said, okay, if worse comes to worse, we get Mac Jones, and he'll do everything that we tell him to do. And these control freak coaches, McVay, LaFleur, Shanahan, they want just total control of that quarterback. I bet it drives LaFleur insane that he's got almost no control with Aaron Rodgers. Mac Jones, a Nick Saban kid, clearly was controlled by Saban and what he wanted to do, Sarkisian. I think that's the route they go. They're going to go with Mac Jones simply because of the control.
Number 4.
Now it gets tricky. Here's Atlanta. This is the question Arthur Smith has to face, which is, Do I get the fourth best quarterback or the fourth quarterback off the board or the best overall player in the draft? I think you're going to see the Falcons' offense change. I think it's going to be that quick strike offense, play action, move the quarterback. I think Trey Lance is in play here because today David Pollock lives in Georgia. David Pollock had the comparison with Trey Lance to Ryan Tannehill. Well, if you've got Arthur Smith as your coach, wouldn't you want the guy that compares to Ryan Tannehill? But Justin Fields is better. Fields can throw the ball down the field, but that's not really his forte, just like it wasn't Tannehill's forte. I think Kyle Pitts is an intriguing option here because Mel Kiper's got him ranked second on his big board. He's a better version of Jonnu Smith. You've got Julio Jones. You've got Calvin Ridley. You get the Jonnu Smith. You draft the running back. You make life easier for Matt Ryan. But I think they go Justin Fields, convincing themselves that he's the second best quarterback in this draft. The play action, the quarterback running, which is what they wanted the RPOs to incorporate with Mariota. That's what they're going to do with Justin Fields. I think they take him fourth.
Number 5.
Cincinnati goes Penei Sewell, and I think that's why San Francisco decided to trade with Miami instead of Cincinnati. I think they probably picked up the phone and they probably called Cincinnati, and Cincinnati said, we're staying at number 5. We're drafting Penei Sewell. We're getting Joe Burrow a franchise left tackle. They don't need a wide receiver. They've got T. Higgins. They've got Tyler Boyd. And even though it'd be great to grab a Jamar Chase right here, I think they say, hey, we've got to protect Joe for the next 10 years. They go with the left tackle. Trevor Maddich said one of the best 3 players in the draft. Cincinnati, I think they love their spot. And Cincinnati is not a spend a lot of money. They're not a... They like picking where they are, and they like drafting the guy, and I think Cincinnati loves their spot. Quarterback. They sit there at 5 and say, we get the best player in the draft.
Number 6.
Jamar Chase, LSU. I think that's why Miami traded to 6. Because Miami knew that no one was taking a wide receiver before number 6. They know Atlanta's not taking a wide receiver. They know Cincinnati's not taking a wide receiver. They know the other teams are going quarterback. I think Jamar Chase is the best player in the draft. When I watched LSU tape last year, this time last year, we all remember it, it was a legitimate shutdown, a legitimate quarantine. Nothing was open. You could go to the grocery store, you could go to the gas station, you could ride your bike. That was it. You couldn't do anything with anybody. I watched a lot of college games this time trying to figure out what we were going to talk about. Every LSU game I watched, Jamar Chase was the best player on the field. And that was on a superstar team. Justin Jefferson was the best rookie receiver last year, and he was a clear number 2 to Jamar Chase. I think Miami knows that. They say, let's get Tua a guy. They traded down to 12, but back to 6 to make sure they got the guy they wanted. To me, it's Jamar Chase.
Number 7.
The Lions are a mess. We have no idea what their general manager is thinking. Could Trey Lance at quarterback be a play here? I think they hope that Carolina gets spooked, that they'll take a quarterback and moves up from 8 to 7 and gives them something else in return. The defensive players, and they need help on defense, the defensive players are just not ranked high enough to take with the 7th overall pick, especially with a quarterback on the board. I think the Lions want to trade out of 7. If they don't, I think they'll get Jared Goff a receiver. Kenny Galladay's gone. They didn't even think about franchise tagging him. They'll go Devontae Smith out of Alabama. And I do, as well, I prefer Chase to Smith. I think they're very comparable. I think they're both great players. Devontae Smith at 7 to the Lions.
Number 8.
Carolina's got to take quarterback here, right? Will there be a quarterback at 8? If it goes quarterback in the top 10, then I got to believe that everybody who wants a quarterback, like Denver at 9, or the other teams that are later in the draft, I think they're trying to jump Carolina because all Carolina has done is send out signals that they want a quarterback. In this case, though, they want a quarterback. I don't even know if they like Trey Lance, but I think they would reason with themselves, he's the best guy there. He's better than Bridgewater. He's our guy. We can sit him on the bench, have Teddy play for a year, but he at least gives our fans hope This new owner wants a quarterback, and I also think Trey Lance may be a little insurance for them. That is, hey, if Deshaun Watson ever does become available, if he gets cleared through all of this, and while I'm not an expert, I mean, I'd be a little nervous about Deshaun getting his name cleared. But maybe Lance is part of it. So we'll give you 2 firsts over the next couple of years, and we'll give you Trey Lance to get Deshaun Watson or something. Carolina, they need a quarterback. I think they try to move up in the draft, but if they stay at 8, I think Lance is there for them.
Number 9.
Denver wants to trade out. They want one of the top quarterbacks, or they want Deshaun Watson. Obviously, they're not going to get Deshaun Watson. They want to trade out. But in this case, Kyle Pitts is still on the board. I hate a tight end in the top 10. I know everybody else doesn't. Mel Kiper's got him ranked as the second best player in the country. He is a difference maker. Remember Vernon Davis when San Francisco took him in the top 10, and he was a Hall of Fame caliber player. You get yourself a Hall of Fame caliber tight end, it's worth it. I'm going to say that they take Kyle Pitts. They'll have Noah Fant and Kyle Pitts, along with Cortland Sutton when he returns from injury, Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver. They'll look at Drew Lock and say, Drew, this is your last chance. This is it. But I think they want to trade out.
Number 10.
Dallas, and I think this is a tough spot for Dallas. We know they're thinking defense, right? Their defense was atrocious. They fired the defensive coordinator. They brought in Dan Quinn from Atlanta. They brought him in to be the coordinator. They don't need offense. They've got receivers. They've got Zeke. They've got Dak. The only thing that could change their mind is if Penei Sewell is still there. He won't be. They got linebackers. You know, the top-ranked linebackers on Mel Kiper's big board, the top-ranked defensive players, Micah Parsons is 11th, the linebacker out of Penn State. Jamin Davis, the linebacker out of Kentucky, is 14th. And Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is 19th. I don't think they move up for a pass rusher or overstep the board. I think it's Caleb Farley, Virginia Tech. Red flags galore, but they need a corner. Trevion Diggs, Caleb Farley. He's the highest-ranked player according to Mel Kiper Jr., and let's not kid ourselves. When is the last time that Jerry Jones, like the last time that Jerry legitimately was worried about a red flag? I don't know. Never. So I'm going to go right there with Caleb Farley. So Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Penei Sewell, the tackle. Cincinnati sitting there at 5. Oh, they love that pick. Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Trey Lance. Denver wants to trade out, but they'll take Kyle Pitts, best player on the board. And Dallas goes with a corner at 10, where they're taking the 15th best player with the 10th pick. And I think that's what those teams are thinking. I think there's a lot of teams out there that want to trade out. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. By the way, if you got some texts, we'll get to them. But David Poyle today talked with Darren Donick and Chase, and he addressed the question that keeps getting asked. Are you going to sell? Should you sell? What's going to happen? We'll get to that coming up next. Big game today, by the way, for the Preds. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They're giving away free vacations for you and your family this month, and it has been so popular they are extending it into next month. With every purchase of a new whole home generator or select new HVAC systems, Hiller is giving you a free week-long vacation. That's 7 days. With every purchase of a new tankless water heater, Hiller is giving you a free weekend-long vacation. That's 4 days. And they'll pay for your gas with a $100 gas card. Choose from over 400 Marriott, Wyndham, Hilton, or Hyatt hotel properties. Take advantage of this unbelievable deal while you can. These deals are only available for a limited time, so make sure you schedule them today. Visit happyhiller.com for all of the details. As always, happy you will be or your service is free. And I've told you oftentimes, I use Hiller at my home, and I absolutely love them. And if I ever have an issue, they come back the next day, take great care of it. I mean, it's so easy to schedule. They're just the best. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporter of the Preds and the Vols. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. Do you buy this Predators run as something tangible, something feasible, that if you were advising David Poile, you would say, you know what? Don't worry about trading Granlund to Toronto. Don't worry about Ekholm or Ellis or whatever it is. This team maybe should have a look at it. What would you say?
It's insane. Of course they should sell. What are we doing? Like you said, they're competing as hard as they can, and you have to give them credit for the results. But the ultimate prize is to get absolutely murdered by Tampa Bay, who, remember, is not only the best team in this division right now, but will only get better because Nikita Kucherov is coming back for the playoffs. So, right now you have to give them credit for turning their season around. At least they're making it respectful. At least it looks like they're going to be a team that plays beyond the end of the regular season based on these playoff percentages. I mean, they've got a much better chance, courtesy of Money Puck, than do the Chicago Blackhawks, than do the Dallas Stars, of making these playoffs. But making the playoffs means you're just going to get manhandled by Tampa in 5 or 6 games. And then if you don't act at the trade deadline, then you aren't making the necessary moves to start transitioning this team into the next phase of whatever it's going to be, because making the playoffs ahead of a broken Dallas team and a bad Chicago team and a Columbus team that's going to fire its coach does not mean everything's fixed.
There you go. Greg Wyshynski, ESPN, on our show yesterday saying, it's insane. I know they've been winning, but sell, sell, sell. Okay? Well, I think that's an objective, honest opinion. I've been telling you, I feel like the bad guy. I've enjoyed these games. I enjoyed the Blackhawk games this weekend. I'm going to enjoy tonight's game. I'm pumped. I'm going to watch tonight's game, and I got the women's basketball game. But I agree with Greg Wyshynski. I feel like, the local Bobo who would get up there and be like, our boys are fighting. Our boys are going to make the playoffs. Our boys are going to go all the way. I can't do that. That's just not who I am. I don't think that will ever be who I am. I mean, even if I was an employee of the team, I still don't think I'd be able to do it. Like, they'd have to fire me. Or they'd have to understand, like, hey, Jared's going to keep it real, and then at the company Christmas party, it might be a little uncomfortable. But I'm with Wyshynski. I mean, I don't see this team being able to beat Tampa. I don't see this team going on a run. I'm glad they're doing it. It's fun. I think it's good for the coach. I think it's good for the fans, but I just don't see it. David Poile was on the midday show today, as he is on every Tuesday, and they asked him, and they've asked him about trades. And David Poile said, ever since the Predators started winning, the phones stopped ringing.
Honestly, there's been way less conversations. That's a factor in how we're playing to moving into a playoff position. And it's also for some of the other teams that are maybe were more bullish. They haven't. Some teams haven't played as well. You see a lot of teams just sort of sitting in a position of they could make it, they may not make it. It'll be really interesting to see what happens in these next 2 weeks. Like I say, you have between, say, 6 and 7 games remaining to play. Somebody going to go on a streak to be very successful in the next 2 weeks, or they're going to be lose games. I think it's really up in the air as to what's going to happen at this trading deadline, because it's not as active as I think some people think it is, based on what I read in the media, especially the Canadian media, that's trying to I think create stories about the trading deadline.
So David is moving the goalpost once again. Remember, he said, hey, give me the road trip. Then they went on the road trip last week. Give me some more time. Now, the trade deadline, the steam's not picking up. It's, we're going to see. It's going to run all the way right up to the deadline. And it's just, David knows what he's going to do. David knows. He's not going to tell you. He's not going to tell me. He's not going to tell anybody. He wants every team in the league to call him and say, we really, really want Matthias Ekholm. And him say, I think we've got a shot to compete for the playoffs. And them saying, well, you've got to give us Ekholm. You got to. In fact, we'll give you all this because we know you could, in theory, keep him and try to go for it. I don't know if David's playing for leverage and selling. I don't know if David really believes in this team. I don't know. But that's how he wants it. And I have to give him credit. While I don't agree with the idea of not selling, and if the trade deadline comes and Mikael Granlund is on this team, I will be an angry radio host. But I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what he's thinking. that's the right thing to do. The one thing I think we all have to be realistic about is that the Tampa Bay Lightning, as Greg Wyshynski pointed out, are awaiting. And Chase asked David Poile about playing Tampa in the first round, and if knowing you're waiting them, if knowing that will change kind of your approach at the deadline, say, hey, even if we make it, we got to play Tampa. So what's the use in worrying about that? And listen to David, because David is usually very candid. David is to the point. I think David was a little surprised because David went off the trail a little bit. Take a listen.
Yeah, so, Tampa Bay is Stanley Cup winner, so maybe I'll answer your thought process where you think of it. Just getting in the playoffs and playing Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay being the favorite, heavy favorite in that series, is that reason to be happy? Is it reason not to make any trades? Again, I have to think about all of those things. I can tell you, I don't think that's a reason for not doing anything. I don't think it's something that would paralyze me, if you will. I think we're still looking to improve. I have no false illusions here that a disappointing start to the season. I think we're recovering. We're finding out a lot about our team. We're inserting a lot of younger players in our lineup, and we're having good success with them. But I do know that we have to get better to get to where we ultimately want to go, and that's to be able to say that we have a chance to compete for the Stanley Cup. So, again, there's going to be some tough decisions that are going to have to be made here in the next couple of weeks, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we learn something every day, and certainly hoping that we play well and win against Dallas tonight, and that will kind of solidify some of my thought process. A loss probably takes us in a little bit different direction. So all I can tell you is stay tuned.
David just kind of says, yeah, Tampa Bay's good, and I don't have any disillusions, but I'm not going to be afraid of Tampa Bay. But he just kind of goes on the David knows what he's going to do. He's not going to tell you. I don't know what he's going to do. You don't know what he's going to do. They don't know what he's going to do. Hal Gill's going to join us next. He doesn't know what he's going to do. That's the right play. I mean, that is the right play for David Poile. He is playing this correctly of saying, hey, I don't know. Give me more time. Let me know. And maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe David's like, boy, I'd love to compete this year, but we got to be realistic. So let's just see. If the Predators go win 10 in a row and they start beating all these teams and the goaltending looks sustainable, maybe there's something to it. Hal Gill next. His thoughts on the victories. His thoughts on the fact that last week I said sell. They've won 4 in a row. That's next. Hey, Preds fans, join ESPN 1025 The Game from 6 to 7 tomorrow night for Smashville Live, featuring Preds players, former players, and other special guests. Watch the show online via 1025 The Game's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and thegamenashville.com. During the show, look for the keyword to text in for your chance to win a pair of tickets to see the Preds and Stars on Thursday. Smashville Live brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka, Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, and Red Spirits and Wine in Bellevue. I don't know if y'all noticed this. I just kicked the little camera that was on here as we are streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. It is a work in progress. I hope it looks good. Ian, are you looking at it right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, what do you think of my shirt? You like it?
It is a nice shirt, nice collared, button-down shirt. Looking good. No tie yet. Still have yet to bust out a tie, so we'll have to see.
I am not wearing a tie.
Okay.
Back when we were in the office every day, I wore a button-down shirt and I wore nice pants every day because I felt like there was like a statement of like, hey, I'm at work. Even though it's talk radio and you can do it literally wearing anything, I wanted just people to know that. Hal Gill joins us next. Stillman and Company right here. We're live from the Wholesaling Studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Last Tuesday, 5:30-ish every Tuesday, Hal Gill joins us, presented by Duncan, featuring their new location in Belmead, and TriStar Moving, TriStar Movers with 5-star service. And Hal and I got into it about selling the roster and not believing the road trip. And then the Predators went out and won 4 games in a row. Hal Gill joins us now on the program. So, Hal, you must feel pretty good about that one, and the guys must be feeling pretty good right now about how they're playing.
Yeah, I would feel good if I was in that locker room. A gut check time. They had a tough road trip, and I think they found what they're all about. Now they're playing some. I'll tell you, they're playing some pretty good hockey. Not just for their team, but in turning it around. But they look like they know what they're doing out there. It's fun to watch right now.
Hal, what's the biggest change? And the reason I ask you this question is because every time Roman Josi gets asked about it, he talks about work ethic. And I'm not knocking that or anything, but it's weird that the young guys come in and bring that shot of energy to the team, but that does seem to be what's happened. What do you think the biggest difference is?
It's funny when you say work ethic. I think if you talk about individual guys working, it doesn't always work out. If you have a team that works together and they work hard in unison, it usually works a lot better. So I think that's where Roman is coming from, is the team is working harder. But I really think, and this is more of a complete breakdown of the game that they were playing. They had Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis back there just doing whatever they want. They were a breakout every time they got the puck. They would just move it up. With those guys out of the lineup, I think the Preds kind of found what they're all about. They had 5 guys coming back defending, making sure everyone was involved, getting it out of the zone and through the neutral zone. It wasn't just, hey, give it to Roman and let him go. And so I think with those guys out of the lineup, oddly enough, I think it might have helped the team. And now with Roman back, you're seeing him. He doesn't have to carry the mail all the time. He's more of a distributor. He's joining the play and being part of it, but he's not. For a long time he was dying to do whatever he could for this team, and now I feel like the team is standing on its own, and he can be a complementary piece. So I think maybe that spell where they missed those guys and they're out of the lineup, all these young guys came in and said, hey, we got to play the right way or else we're going to get smoked and embarrassed. And they've become a pretty good team.
Have you ever been on a team, Hal, like this team, where it was just so bad, and now the team's gotten hot, and I may not believe in it personally, but I can tell they believe in it. Like that group of guys, they believe that they could go play Tampa in a 7-game series and beat them.
Yeah, I think this team believes in what they're doing, and that's the that's the fun part. That's when it gets to be a good time, when you say, all right, if we work together, we can get something done. Now, I'm not saying it was funny listening to David Poile talk. Tampa would be heavy favorites, but if I'm Tampa and I've been in their shoes where you're cruising through and it seems like, hey, everything's great, and Kucherov, they're hoping he's healthy and back and ready to go, and then you say, I'd be scared, to be honest with you, because this team is hungry, and the Preds are playing a hungry game right now, and a lot of times that's hard to play against. And I look at Chicago, their defense, they had a hard time playing against the Preds forwards just because they're relentless right now, and that's tough hockey to play against.
Hal Gill is our guest, presented by Duncan, featuring their new location in Belmead and TriStar Moving, TriStar Movers with 5-star service. How big are these 2 games against Dallas? Knowing the game-in-hand situation, knowing that you are now on even footing with Chicago after you beat them, knowing that you've beaten Dallas in Dallas the last 2 chances you had, how big are these 2 right now on the schedule?
As I was talking about it, I feel bad for these guys. There's no, not that there's ever an easy 2 points or 2 points that isn't a huge deal. Right now, every game is huge. I mean, you have to keep Dallas down. I mean, you can't do all that work and then all of a sudden lighten up on Dallas and give up points to these guys and lose the points that you need. Every game is huge. This divisional format
is something like I've never seen. So, it's hard to explain. Like as a player, sometimes you go out and you say, hey, this is a non-conference matchup, and we can go out there and play our best. And if it doesn't work out, well, it doesn't work out. That's not the case, and that's not going to be the case for the rest of the year. So it's huge. These are huge 4 points, and they need them.
Hal, I enjoyed the games this weekend. I thought Sunday's game, I don't want to say it felt like a playoff game, but it definitely had some juice to it, and it's been a while since a Predators game has had that kind of juice to it. And yet, I still believe this team should sell. And I may not sell Ekholm and just go crazy, but I do think Mikhail Granlund, if the reports are true and Toronto is offering a second-round pick for Mikhail Granlund, I think they should do it. And if there are, these guys, the Eric Hallas and maybe even a Kalle Järnkrok, if there is a good deal to be had, I personally think they should do it. That being said, I don't know how you can have John Hines preach the message that he preached all last year when he took the job, then after they lost to Arizona, then how he was preaching the same message time in, time out when it wasn't working this year. Now it's finally working. Now the team has some confidence. Now the guys are having fun. Now they're believing in the coach. And then you go down there and say, Granlund, pack up, you're out of here. And what that would do to everybody else there that's like, wait a minute, we're busting our butts for everything that you guys have been preaching to us, and now you sell away one of the guys who's playing the best. Even though that's what I think they should do, I don't know how you actually do that to the guys in that room.
Yeah, it's a good point. Everyone knows it's a business and yada, yada, yada. But, I really think there was a point in that locker room where they said, guys, if we don't start winning, we're all leaving. And they said, hey, we got to get back in the hunt. And they worked so hard to get there and to get back into the position that they're in right now. And so I'm sure it would be devastating to some of these guys to work that hard and then have it to be sellers and to get rid of guys. So, as far as that goes, though, these guys know it's a business. They know that if David Poile says, hey, this is a good move for the team, they know they're going to be part of it. So no one wants to see that happen, and I think the way they played, they deserve a chance. And if they keep going the way they're going, then they're probably going to get a chance. I don't see David Poile throwing away a season just because he gets excited about. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how many big deals there are going to be out there this year. It'll be interesting to see once the chips start to fall. You see Eric Staal leave Buffalo. Buffalo's going to get rid of everyone, I imagine. Why wouldn't they? But I'm interested to see when do chips start to fall and how does David Poile play into that? I don't know. But as a player on this team, I'd be pretty upset. I'd want a chance to make a run at this.
Hal Gill with us. I don't buy the narrative that this team is the St. Louis Blues from 2019, but I do understand why people would say that. I do understand how you could look to that and point to it. Have you ever played on a team in your career where the low was so low and the team got hot and made something of it? Because the 2016 team, 2016-2017, they were never this low that this team had been through earlier this year.
Yeah, I was 1 year, 2009, I was with Pittsburgh. We were in 11th place. I was a 10-game healthy scratch. It was as low as I've ever been. I don't know if you remember what happened that year, but
you got to skate around with the cup above your head.
Yeah. So, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom till you realize what you're all about as a team. And so, it's hard to trap lightning in a bottle, but you look at this team and you say, well, what do you have? You have a fourth line that is going out. The beast line is going and crashing and banging and getting things going. You look at that third line, Rocco just started pumping it in the net. Then you have Järnkrok, who's on fire. Granlund is playing well. Cunningham comes in, looks like he's pretty good. The Johansson, Arvidsson, and with Forsberg out, you look at Tolvanen stepping up, and those guys look good. Now, if you get everyone looking good and you start to add pieces back in, get Ryan Ellis back, get Forsberg back, if Duchesne comes in and can contribute and give you something, all of a sudden you might have lightning in a bottle, and that's why it's fun. I mean, to be in a team in that locker room, it makes it that much more fun when you've been beaten down to come back and you learn how to work for it. And that's what Roman Yossi's talking about, that work ethic. You figure out a lot about yourself when you're getting kicked. And when you turn it around, it feels pretty good. So I'm betting these guys feel pretty good, and they want to keep it going.
Hal Gill, as always, he'll be on the broadcast. The one thing I have to disagree with is, I think the defense is fine without Ryan Ellis, which, don't come back and ruin it now. Hal Gill, as always, presented by Duncan, featuring the new location in Bellmead, TriStar Movers, TriStar Movers with 5-star service.
Jared, you can't come out and throw the last punch and then run away.
I'm not running away. I'm just saying. You're
always going to get the last word. You don't have to say it when I'm on. You can just wait until I'm off, and then you have the rest of the show.
I'll say it to you. I'll tell you what I texted. Hal, the people love it when you come in here and put me down. So I'm going to give you an opportunity, because I texted Robbie Stanley yesterday thinking Robbie Stanley was going to tell me I was nuts. I said, right now, I'd rather have Carrier out there than Ryan Ellis. I stand by it. Your thoughts?
You know what? Carrier has impressed me. I think he's played awesome. I don't think you can take him out of the lineup. Ryan Ellis is an elite defenseman in the NHL. Carrier's got a long way to go before he gets there. So I'll disagree with you. Now you can go tell everyone how I was wrong. I'll let you go on that one, Jared.
I can't wait. And if he comes back and they start losing, you're the first person I'm going to. Hal Gill, as always, he'll be on the broadcast tonight. Hal, take care. Have a good call.
All right. Thanks, Jared.
Yep. Hal Gill joining us on the program. Predators game day is coming up next. Plus, I have not been keeping up with this, but apparently on the Robbie and Rex Road program, they have the click to pick, which we always talk about. And Robbie has not gotten one right the entire year. So I'm going to make a click to pick tonight. My pick is going to hit. I'm going to go 1-for-1, retire, go into the Hall of Fame, and still be ahead of Robbie Stanley. So that's all coming up next. Stillman and Company, Predators game days next. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
It's Hockey Night in Smashville.
Deflects back for Duchesne. His shot stop and the score!
What are the keys to victory tonight? What's being said in the locker room? Where do the Preds reside in the Central Division standings? Jared Stillman has the latest now. With Preds Game Day on Stillman & Company. Brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. This is Smashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Predators Game Day is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Tonight, 7 o'clock, right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. The Predators take on the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars come in at 11, 12, and 9. That's good for 31 points. The Predators 18, 17, and 1, good for 35. I can't remember the last time the Predators were over 500, and here they are. It feels like just last week we were talking about a team that was minus 20, minus 24 in goal differential. Right now the Predators are sitting at minus 15. They are red hot. Winners of 4 in a row. They beat Detroit twice. They beat Chicago twice. If the playoffs started today, they'd be in. Tampa Bay sits in first place with 50 points. Carolina with a game in hand at 49. Florida at 48. Then come the Predators and Blackhawks tied at 34. 37. Columbus with 34. All have played 36 games. Dallas 4 games in hand. 6 points behind the Predators. So a win tonight and a win on Thursday would be huge. Detroit in last place, and the Predators, after sweeping Detroit, sweeping Chicago, not even close to being worried about Detroit 1 iota. It's time now for the coach's take. First, though, let's get to the injury report. Philip Forsberg, no update as to whether or not he'll be available, but John Hines did confirm today that UC Saros is available, although that does not mean that Saros will or will not start. Again, Hines just saying he was available. The Predators have swept the Blackhawks. Things are going good. Now you start a series with Dallas. It's time for the coach's take. Here's what John Hines said about moving on to the Dallas Stars.
We're done with the Chicago series, and we've kind of taken everything day by day and really focus on the upcoming series. So Dallas is a big challenge. They have a good team, and it's a Central Division rival. Regardless of what setups the seasons are. So we know it's going to be a competitive game, physical game, and we want to be at our best. And we feel like we're playing some good hockey. But the most important thing is that for us, just the mentality in which we play the game with, our competitive spirit, are the things that have really been difference makers for us. And we're looking to bring that again tonight.
John Hines covering all of his bases by sitting there and saying, hey, that series is over. This is a really good team. We're proud of the way we're playing. We got to focus on tonight. So, again, he covered all of his bases. It should be noticed the Predators' 5-game winning streak, the last time that happened was October 30th through November 10th of 2018. So that was back when, no disrespect, but that was back when the Predators were good. And that was coming off the President's Trophy year, and they ended up winning the division that year, and things are obviously not going that smooth. So I'm going to pick to click tonight. I have no idea who picked what on the morning show, but Robbie has not correctly picked a goal scorer this season for the Predators. So, Ian, you heard it here first. I'm going to go tonight with the captain, Roman Josi. I think he scores another goal from the defense position. I think I'm going to go 1 for 1, hang up my cleats after tonight, be right, and let the morning show sit there and wallow when they know that my pick clicks. That's going to do it for us. The pregame show is coming up next. Darren will have all of the latest. And then, of course, at 7 o'clock, puck drop, the voice of the Nashville Predators, Pete Weber with Hal Gill. We will see you tomorrow. Big day of sports, big night. We'll see you tomorrow at 2.